Hey everybody, Jesse Slaughter with the Pursuit Podcast. And today's guest is Stacy Zinn. Stacy has served as a resident agent in charge for the DEA, and she served all across our country. Not only that, she served on a tactical team in Afghanistan during the global war on terror. She has some amazing stories about some amazing conflicts and some very, very close calls. Stacy finished her career in Montana. Now she's stepped up and she's running for Congress in Montana. This is going to be a great episode. It's super exciting. Can't wait. Stand by.
69 foot pursuit. Stop! Sir! Stop!
Stacy?
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah. Happy to be here on the snowy day.
Oh, absolutely.
We've been planning this forever and the weather has been perfect. And then the first day that we get like a blowing snowstorm is the day you have to drive here. So
You know, it's okay. It's worth it.
I appreciate it so much.
No,
I really
thank
do.
you very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Super excited. So you are my first real law enforcement official that I've had on. I know it sounds weird that I'm in law enforcement, but you're kind of the first one that I've had on that has that experience. So kind of as an icebreaker, I'll start off here. So what does a retired DE agent carry every day with her for safety? What's your EDC?
Well, I carry two guns. I'll switch from a 9mm to a 357,
Okay.
depending on my purse.
Oh, all right.
In the event, if I don't want to have to carry my purse all the time, then I'll go with my 9.
Yeah.
But if I'm always carrying my purse and stuff, I'll go with the 357.
So what brand, what models?
Oh, Glock.
Glock. Okay.
Yeah,
So Glock
Glock.
9. What model?
43X.
43. Oh, 43X.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So are you running stock everything on it, stock gun, or do you have like cool accoutrements?
No. The basic.
Okay.
I mean, because it's in the purse, you don't want to have all those little dangly things. That's
Yeah.
gonna if you want to pull it out quick, you don't want to have the gadgets that are going to get caught on the cloth and stuff.
All
I
right.
keep it very smooth.
So you're not running like a red dot?
Nope.
Nope. Just
Nope.
running a clean Glock 43.
I love iron sights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shoot for the middle.
Gotcha.
Aim for the middle.
Awesome. And then what's your 357?
It's a concealed.
Right.
It's a Glock.
Oh.
It's an older model.
Oh, when you say 357, you mean 357 SIG.
No, Glock.
Oh, okay.
They have a small.
No, I know, but it's 357 caliber, but
Yes.
it's the Glock. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got that years ago.
Okay.
And I dusted it off. I had it in my safe. And when I was on the job, I carried a 40 cal,
Okay.
and I loved it, but just too big and bulky
Yeah.
for concealment purposes.
Oh yeah.
So
I hate 40. I won't carry anything in 40. No.
see, I grew up on the 40.
I know, I did too, but it's just for the amount of recoil for what it actually does. I'm a 9mm all day type of person.
Well, see, DEA went to the 9mm. They made us last 4.5 years. We were phasing out the 40, but as a baby agent, we started off with the 40, and when they were trying to take the 40 away from me, it's like, no,
Just what you liked. Huh?
that's what I like. But
Yeah.
yes, the recoil.
Yeah.
They always laughed at me because I have small hands and
Right.
it's bouncing around, but I can get back on target and keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, it's funny. My wife was the same way. My wife carried a Glock 22, the full size Glock.
Mhm.
She carried that her whole career at probation, and she loved it, and she could shoot it like no problem.
There you
So,
go.
yeah. No, I'm a big. I used to be a 45 guy, and then I went to 9 and just never looked back.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because those are two completely different.
Yeah, but I learned that I shoot a lot. So first of all, the cost of ammo was way cheaper. And I shoot a ton. I mean, I try to shoot anywhere from 500 to 1,000 rounds a month.
Okay.
And then I also appreciate the softer recoil. And shooting is kind of my passion. And I want to be able to do it when I get older. And tearing up my wrists and thumbs. I already have horrible arthritis in
Yeah.
both my thumbs. I want to, have longevity with it. And it's kind of like lifting weights in the gym. I don't lift weights heavy.
Point taken.
Because it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I want to do this every day. I don't want to do it and then get hurt.
Well, you think back in the day, though, I mean, the bigger the gun, how do you say this? Especially being a female, I always had to prove myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they were going to carry the 40, I was going to carry the 40. If they
Yep.
had the long gun, I have to have the long gun.
Yep.
And I always had iron. And they would say, Stacy, you need to convert over. You need to get, the ACOG and this and that. And I'm like, I do well with iron. And then sure enough, I converted over. But for me, shooting fast, iron, I can settle the eyesight with that little dot.
Yeah, it took me a long time. So I carry a red dot on my pistols.
Right.
It took me a long time to transition to it. But once I did, keeping both eyes open and being focused on the target, not on the sights,
Right.
really helped me. And I also noticed I was getting less eye strain because I wasn't squinting or doing weird stuff with my eyes. Just was easier for me. And so I roll with that. But I still like my kind of my deep concealment gun.
Mm-hmm.
I run irons on it because same reason you said. I don't want anything catching and snagging on it or whatever. But what else do you carry? Do you carry anything else? Do you carry like a big old dagger?
I always have the knife on my waist.
Nice.
I do it, and I do it for several reasons. Just because it gives me confidence, but it's also a deterrent. If I have my shirt tucked in,
Mm-hmm.
and if I'm walking in an area where it's a little bit shady, they'll look at me. They'll look at my size, and if they see that knife, then they'll keep going. They'll look for the person that is on their phone, looking away, and
Right.
doesn't have an obvious weapon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always carry a knife with me too, but it's usually like to open envelopes. You know what I've started carrying actually, which I've always been a big believer in this. But I've really gotten serious about being disciplined about it. Is I always carry that little palm OC spray. You've seen those?
Yes.
And I'm a big fan. I mean, those things are like this big. They just drop in my pocket or catch up my clip of my pants, and I wear them. And I remember even when I was a baby cop, I always had some type of non-lethal something. Because 90% of the stuff you're going to get mixed up into an off-duty is going to be a scuffle. It's not going to be a life and death situation. But it's getting out of that scuffle, like being able to disengage.
Sure.
Because I'm a big believer, like, people are like, well, if that ever happened, I'd go save the day. And I'm like, I usually have kids with me, so I'm going to leave. And I just don't want someone to stop me on my way out.
No, I mean, point taken. And what I always encourage women, because I practiced jiu-jitsu when I was growing up, and
Awesome.
Shinto Yoshinryu jiu-jitsu, and then also I dealt with capsaicin but bear spray.
Mm-hmm.
When you're walking the dog and you have bear spray, I've been sprayed with the bear spray, and I thought I was going to die.
Oh, it's serious stuff.
Oh, it's serious stuff. You take one breath in, that stuff goes to your lungs. You're like, oh my gosh. You start shutting down. And when I felt that, I'm like, that's the stuff to carry, non-lethal.
Well, if I go hiking in the backcountry, I'm hunting, I always have a can of bear spray. I'm carrying usually 2 guns, usually the rifle and then handgun. But I everything I've ever read and seen, and anybody I know who's had an encounter, it's like, especially against a grizzly bear, the spray works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's respiratory. It goes into the respiratory, shuts down your lungs and stuff, and it makes you pause.
Yeah.
That's when you are able to make a break and go. The only problem with all that bear spray and capsaicin and all that types of just the spray itself is that you don't know if it's a windy day, it comes back on you.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna have some problems also.
I've been exposed indirectly and directly probably a half dozen times on the street where someone meant to spray, the bad guy missed and got me, or I took it, as we got engaged in the fight, or we did it in a house and you ate it. And I'll never forget when I went to the academy way back 24 years ago now. I made a smart ass comment and I said, I thought it was dumb when we were in the academy that we got sprayed. I was like, are we going to get shot in the vest too? Like, why are we doing this? I had to do push-ups for that comment. But then once I did it, and then when I got exposed out on the street, I was really glad that I did, because I didn't panic. I was like, this is fine. It's going to last forever. So you might as well last forever. Just relax.
No, it's true. I was a bodyguard before I got into DEA.
Oh, really?
And we had to learn to do the stream with the stream, you got to hit above on the forehead so that it goes down to her eyes.
Yeah.
First they hit me in the throat. I'm like, this doesn't do anything. And then when they hit me, then it's like, okay, this burns. But now you know what the person that you're shooting for or aiming at, what they're going through.
Yeah.
So it's good for you to experience that.
Yeah. No, exactly. But yeah, it's crazy, but no, it's just, I think a lot of people out there want to know, like, especially without, because we're going to talk about your history and all the cool work you did and stuff like that. And it's fascinating to you have to be a real student of it though. You can't just like, I always tell people, it's not my quote. I think it's Colonel Cooper's quote. It's like, just because you own a guitar doesn't mean you're a guitar player.
True. Very true.
And just because you own a gun doesn't mean you're a gunfighter. That you know what you're doing. And it's a martial art. You keep working at it over years and years and years.
And you build from it, you learn from it, but you have to get that foundation down. If you don't you don't have that foundation, they're going to figure you out one way or another down the road.
Yeah, probably one of the best things. One of my good friends, Steve Fisher, I love what he says. He's like, none of his classes are labeled advanced firearms class. He's like, there's no such thing as an advanced class. It's just the fundamentals over and over and over again.
Right.
It's just a different instructor has a different teaching style.
Mm-hmm.
So he or she is going to teach it to you in a different method, which is then going to click with you, hopefully. Right. That's why you go to different instructors. Other than that, it's all fundamental.
Well, that's what gets irritating, because it seems like, especially with DEA, it's like one way, that's the way you're supposed to do it. There's no deviation. Well, everyone's different. Everyone has the way they draw the holster, how they hold the gun and stuff. And I get it. I mean, training and stuff, but my hands are smaller. Some people hands are larger. Manipulating the gun, I'm going to do it a little bit different in order to be proficient at it.
Right.
But you see these, it's a cookie. What's that?
Yeah,
cookie
cutter?
Yeah, it's type style.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. Like, there's these methodologies that these organizations take on, and they decide that everyone's going to learn this exactly the same way, but they don't account for body size, strength. We in our organization, we let people carry what they want to carry. We have an approved list, so it says within tight ramifications. But the idea is, what if you're a great deputy? You're awesome. You do everything perfect, but because of a condition or something you have, you don't rack the slide properly. So, because maybe it's too big or the spring's too tight or something like that. Well, we're going to throw you away.
Right.
We're going to send you. We're just going to send you packing, or are we going to just say, oh, well, they make a gun that's not a big deal on, and then you just help them out.
Oh yeah, no, it's like with my long gun. I can see my PFI right now. I hear him, yelling at me, "Got to do it. Lean it this way. Boom, boom." And I'm like, my hands don't do. I have to have more strength, so I have to turn it a different way. I have to put my toes in my chest, and I'm like, no, get away. So yeah, I dealt with that even as a supervisor.
Oh yeah,
I still dealt with that, and just grin and bear it and suck it up and move forward.
I remember when they used to teach goofy stuff like holding a gun out in front of you, dropping the magazine, and they were like, keep it out here. And then stick, you don't want to take, and then with rifles, the same thing. They had you hold it. Well, then when you remove this hand, it's front heavy and it wants to drop into your hand. It's like, just tuck it under your arm and get it over with. Like,
so now back to it's like boom here, boom, boom. And then now it's like feed the beer can. Beer can.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, yeah, but I always do the finger thing because that's what I'm comfortable. That's what I grew up on. I can do it. Nope, got to do the beer can now.
So I always did the finger too, because that's how I did my pistols. So my mind would just know when I reached for it, I'd do it the same way. So I try that technique, and I always learned it because I was an instructor, because I was like, well, what if I get somebody who can't do the technique I can do, then I can know how to do another one. But I was the same way because it was always consistent. Yeah. Just consistent as we go. So one thing I want to say before we get kind of rolling here is, first of all, I do want to highlight what you're getting into. I totally want to talk about you running for Congress. So don't think that I'm not going to, but I want everyone to get to know you.
Right. Thank you.
I think that's important. I think your backstory is super, super important.
Right.
I think you've got a really cool backstory. And I want everyone to know that. Before we go, I got a couple gifts for you. I know you work out, so there's a 30-day pass to the Peak. They're a sponsor of ours.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
And then you get you actually getting the first one of these on air because they finally came. This is ACBC out of Utah. Luann is the lady who makes these for us. And that's a Pursuit Podcast Challenge Corner.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Only people who come on the show get it. So this is what it looks like outside the package, but I figured I'd put it in the package for you. It's just the same on both.
No, super cool.
But yeah. So thank you so much for coming on, and
No,
we
thank
really
you for having
appreciate you. Yeah. So let's kind of start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in Texas,
Okay.
Dallas, Fort Worth area.
Oh, yeah.
It's Duncanville, South Dallas. That's home of the Pantherettes basketball team. Phenomenal teams. Now they're strong in basketball or football. So yes, that's where I stayed. Graduated from Duncanville High School and then went to college. UT. Well, it's UT Austin of Arlington. So UTA.
Okay.
And then I got my master's.
Is that like a satellite of UT Austin?
That's what I like to say.
Okay.
Yes. And then I got my master's out in Texas Tech.
Okay. Wow. What is your degree and your master's in?
Combination of 3 fields: mass communication, public administration, and business. Because I was working full time, I put myself through college. So when I was getting my master's, I was working during the day and going to college at night. So I wanted to get an MBA. I thought, being a female, I want to get my MBA, come back and be a CEO of some company one day. And they didn't offer that program at night.
Okay. So let's go back to high school real quick. Did you play sports and stuff in high school? Were you competitive?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I grew up. I played fast pitch. Loved fast pitch. I was on the traveling team.
Okay. What position?
That was catcher, and then occasionally shortstop and second base.
Okay.
But I loved catching.
Okay.
Because that was just where the action was.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that. And unfortunately, in our high school didn't have fast pitch softball. Also grew up playing basketball and ran track.
Wow. You were busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
That's how I got through high school.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I that's how I got through high school too. I hated school. So I just literally stayed eligible.
No, I get it because I was an average student.
So I was below average. And but that was a great thing about sports, right? They had tight eligibility requirements, and you had to keep the grades to stay on the teams. So you just got it done.
And they're strict. I mean, the coaches took care of us. Mm-hmm. The coaches were that second parent that, if you got out of line, you'd hear it from your parents, but then you'd have to hear it from the coach too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what saved me through high school.
Oh, totally. Me too. Yeah. I would probably be in jail.
Yeah.
It wasn't for sports in high school.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I loved my coaches.
Yeah. No, they were great mentors too. Mm-hmm. Like just like really solid mentors. And that really helps.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Who was your favorite coach when you were in school?
Coach Addie.
Yeah.
Yes. She was my JV coach.
Okay.
And she took a liking to me. She took care of me. I had gotten some incidences where I was at crossroads, and she took me underneath her wing, and she's like, you know what? Basically what happened was I got into a fender bender, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for the fender bender. And I was doing part-time work, and I needed to pay something quickly. So she had heard about it. She's like, okay, you're going to come work for me. You're going to work in doing yard work and stuff like that. So she gave me the cash. I paid off my debt. And because of her doing that for me, I was very loyal to her, and she protected me. She watched out after me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
No, she was a good lady.
That's a great story. So were you like slinging drugs at that time and got in a car crash?
No. I was at a party and just careless, reversed.
Yep.
Boom. Uh-oh. What do I do?
I just thought if I spun it that way, great start to your DEA career, right?
No. But my senior year in high school, there was a new kid. It was a male, and good-looking male. And so I'm watching him, like, what is he doing? And, us girls we're kind of scoping him out. And we've been watching him go to these different parties. So there's something about him. There's something not right. I can't figure it out. And then one day I thought to myself, this guy's a cop. I had no experience.
Are we talking some 21 Jump Street stuff?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
No.
No, absolutely.
No way.
But he was clean cut. Like I said, he was good looking.
Yeah.
Fit.
Yeah, because he was 24.
Yeah, that is true. It's very true. And so at a party, drinking was going on. And so I was drinking and he said, Stacy, I want to talk to you. Okay. And he got in the car and he goes, what do you know about me? I said, you're a cop. Shooting my mouth off. And he's like, here comes the badge, flips it out. Yes, I'm a cop. Yes, I'm doing undercover, blah, blah, blah. And I about freaked out. And I'm just shooting my mouth off.
Why would he tell you that?
I never really figured that out. He was also trying to pick up some girls too.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Yes.
So maybe he's trying to, impress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
well, with that being said, though,
That's some life goals, though. You know that. I mean, I'm telling you what. Get all the way into being a cop, get into detectives, to work undercover, to pick up high school girls.
hey, well, he ended up marrying one. So,
Oh, there you go. Jeez.
yes. I mean, we're still friends today. Yes.
It's hilarious.
But no, that he was doing undercover work and he opened up my eyes to what was going on. Back then you had marijuana, quaaludes, black beauties, and you'd every now and then you hear about cocaine. Well, he was at the parks and stuff, wheeling and dealing and buying cocaine and stuff. And he ended up doing a roundup and he ended up arresting some of our high schoolers. But that planted the seeds of what my career was going to be, what I was going to do further down the road.
Right.
Because after that, 2 years or a year or 2 years later, there was another undercover cop at a Midlothian high school. And he was at
a what?
Midlothian. It's a town by Duncanville,
Okay. All right.
South Dallas.
No,
He
never
was
heard.
actually killed.
Whoa.
They had took him out to a field and executed him. And that was like
Who was they? Just dealers?
just dealers.
Wow.
Yeah. And so those scenarios right there end up being, it was just the seeds that were planted.
Yeah.
And I always remembered that. And when I did bodyguard work or executive protection agent work for 8 years. And then after I had reached my glass ceiling, then I thought, where do I fit? And I thought, you know what? I want to go work for the government. I want to work for the DEA because of that.
So pump the brakes here. This chronological thing to this is not going well. So you're in high school. You're in high school and you got, strange older cops undercover showing your badge. And then you jump. So after high school, do you go right to college or what do you do right after high school?
So I'm working 2 to 3 jobs.
Okay.
And yes, right after high school, start summer school, getting your basics, and then go to UTA in the fall.
So what are you doing for work at this time?
Well, one of them was I started scorekeeping softball my sophomore year. It was my father's Dresser Industries had built my father at Dresser Industries had built a great softball field, and I was the scorekeeper. And that was back in '83. So he paid me $7, something like that. Back then, that was golden.
That's a good chunk of
That was
change.
it.
Yeah.
So I would go there 3-4 nights a week, be up there scorekeeping, and then I was working for Baskin Robbins.
Okay.
So I was scooping ice cream, and yes, so I was juggling 2 jobs at the time frame. And then when I turned 16, I started working for Skaggs Alpha Beta at a grocery store, working on the drug wall, ordering drugs and keeping everything nice and clean. Also, still scorekeeping, and then I also did not volunteer work. I was getting paid for it to go to Fort Worth, Texas, on the south side or north side, and work with Hispanics, females, and start mentoring them. So I was juggling on this because my parents were divorced, and I was trying to make ends meet, pay for my car, pay for my education, and then started school full time in the fall, but working in the evenings.
Okay.
So I've always worked.
Yeah.
And I've always seems like and I worked all throughout college.
Okay. And so you go to UT like right out of high school though. You don't have like a big delay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when do you start doing bodyguard work? Like when do you start doing that?
So let's see, 4 years in undergrad and then go to Texas Tech. That took about 3 years. When I graduated, I was unemployed. I was working at Russ Berry, throughout college at Texas Tech. Westbury, I was a sales rep, so I traveled throughout West Texas.
What's Westbury?
Stuffed animals.
Oh, really? Okay.
The troll dolls, the company that brought the troll dolls back.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, I was a sales rep, traveled all over the place, and when I graduated, trying to get back to Dallas, I didn't have a job.
So on the campaign from now on, I want to hear you say, when I was in Texas, I was a stuffed animal salesman. And if you can sell stuffed animals, you can sell anything.
That is so true. Yeah, it is. Cuddly stuffed animal.
There you go.
That's right.
Come on.
That's
they're just like politicians, right?
Well, yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah.
They're soft and cuddly, but they're kind of useless, right?
Full of stuffing. That's absolutely correct.
Yes.
Exactly. No, and then so when I was in between jobs, came back to Dallas, and I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do, and I did not like being unemployed. It was just because I grew up working, and I felt down on myself. I'm like, I've gone to school and now I'm unemployed. So there was an ad in the paper, Dallas Morning News, and it said, "Do you like to travel, take photos, and make money?" And I'm like, sign me up. So I showed up this, well, what do you call it? Audition no, it's not audition. It felt like audition, but I went in, it was a big auditorium and just a sea of men. And I walked in and looked around, and they said afterwards, they took one look at me and they said, "There's no way in hell we're going to hire her." However, what it was it was actually, they were interviewing people to go to Spokane, Washington. That's when the steel companies the union was striking. And they wanted people to travel up there, secure the warehouse, take photographs of the individuals that were rioting or striking, and you got paid very good money. Well, they said that when they looked at me, they're like, but the Saudi Arabian princesses that were coming into the country at the time frame, they always have bodyguards, or they were tired of having male bodyguards. They wanted female bodyguards. And there was no female bodyguards out there, very, very few. So that's where I fit. That's the first time when I was a female that helped me get the job. And so they hired me, they trained me, and then I started working the Saudi Arabian families, the royal family.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know it was going to go there. So you go to this audition to take photographs, and they hire you as a bodyguard.
Yeah. Yes.
So talk to me about the training. Like, tell me, how did that whole thing go?
Oh, it was bare basic. I mean, I really had to learn how to shoot a gun through my friends that were former Marines. They would take, okay, you pull it out, you go up your center mass, you come out, keep your eyes, and boom. They would treat you, it was Vance International, and they would teach me how to shoot. They would teach me a little bit of hand-to-hand, but I knew deep in my heart that, okay, I've got to get some more training underneath my belt.
Right.
Because basically, executive protection agent can be a glorified chauffeur.
Yeah.
Or just a person that does the advanced work, has secured the hotels.
Or a bullet catcher.
Exactly. It is a bullet catcher. It is. It's basically, and you're reactive instead of being proactive. So your main priority is to get that protectee out of harm's way, get them secured, and then flee.
Right.
So that's what I did for approximately 8 years.
Wow. So talk to me about that, like that adventure. Like, where are you over in Saudi Arabia all the time, or is it just when they're here?
Well, United States, Mexico, and I did other families on the Northern Hemisphere. So the Saudis would come in, and there's a whole bunch of royal family members, so it's nothing really glorified. But I did more the family that was closer to the king at the time. They'd come in, and I am convinced the more money that one has, the more that they lose perspective of life. Because you would see them come in, they would buy they would get the finest of everything, 3, 4, 5 of it. And then they'll take it back to Saudi and store it in the basements. They would come in and they expect to be treated with respect, but not at that level, but at this level.
Right.
Is this a very, very interesting dynamic. But when the Saudis weren't coming in, then we dealt with other ordinary people like Mars Candy, the Mars family. I did Evil Knievel.
It's my uncle.
Evil Knievel?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
He was one of my last
he's
protectees.
Mexico. Oh yeah.
And, he treated me kind. He was very kind to me. But he was, what's the word, cantankerous?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ornery.
No,
Oh,
I
yeah.
like cantankerous. I think you're right. No,
Yeah.
I think you. No, he was. Wow. I mean, I couldn't fit in many rooms with him because his ego was so big. But I mean, he was the cool part about him was, I mean, he had serious star power and serious swagger,
Oh, yeah.
and he owned it. And that was one of the things I always respected about him, was that he knew how to own rooms. He knew how to how to take control. I mean, he was the consummate alpha male.
Oh, yes, he was.
Consummate alpha male. Now, was he when you were guarding him? Was he with Crystal? Was his
Crystal.
wife? Then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were in Texas or in Dallas. They were making a product, and they want him to be the face of the product. So they're bringing him down, and he had ran his mouth and pissed off some of the biker gangs. Now,
Yeah.
Stacy, you need to watch him and babysit him a little bit. And I'm like, okay, here we go. But I mean, like I said, he treated me golden. I mean, he was older then, still flirted. And
Was he on oxygen then?
no,
Okay, so
No.
this is before his health really took
Correct.
over. Okay,
yeah, he was still mobile.
he's still playing golf and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was good to see that side of him.
Yeah.
But everyone kept warning him, watch out, don't do anything wrong, watch out. But didn't have any problems.
Yeah.
Let's see, other people I did was former Vice President Walter Mondale. I did, there was a Times Magazine Scientist of the Year, David Ho. And then I did a private family out of Florida, which I actually had left. I did to the royal family off and on for 8 years. But I had broken away from Vance International and went with a private family and was worked with them for a couple of years. And then I went independent and I became a freelance bodyguard.
Wow.
So
Is that were you making good money at that time? Was the money good?
it was average money. It was before 9/11. So the
Okay.
first thing that people would cut on their budget was the security. It wasn't until 9/11 when everyone thought, oh, security is actually important.
Right.
Back then, though, for my age, I was making really good money.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So you were in the States and then you were overseas. I've always been curious about this. How did you deal with the different gun laws? Because I mean, you got to be able to have the right equipment to protect your principal. So how do they deal with that? Do you just don't ask, don't tell?
Correct.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Because you're flying in on private jets, right?
Yes.
So it's just get off the plane, and because of the amount of money,
Correct.
they're avoiding the customs.
Back then. Yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing of what money buys,
Right.
or the influence of money. I mean, we can come in, land, we wouldn't be touched.
So what was your? I've always wanted to know this too. So you're in Mexico, let's just say, and you're armed, and you're protecting your principal, and you're doing your thing. What was your plan if you had to shoot somebody? Did you have an exfil plan where you were like, or were you just gonna leave the body in the street, go with your principal, get on the private jet, and
get out? Yeah. But because back then I was very naive. I mean, I didn't know anything about the government stuff. I'm too young, too naive, and followed the team leaders.
Well, yeah.
And didn't know any better.
I mean, that's still the way it works today, though, isn't it? I mean, has anything really changed? Because those people still get protected.
Well, yeah, and that is true. That is,
I mean,
that's very true.
It's not any. I mean, this is like the oldest time thing. I mean,
Yeah.
If you're like you said, if you have money and you're wealthy, it kind of reminds me of the gun control argument, where people are like, well, all you serfs need to be done with your guns. We're done. And then the wealthy people go have like 12 armed security guards.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's like, well, yeah, you guys don't need that. Well, I bet you think that because you walk around 12 armed security guards.
So yeah, the rich or the wealthy are protected with weapons. They may not have them on them, but the bodyguards do.
Absolutely.
And the criminals have the weapons.
Absolutely.
It's the middle that do not, or they're following the laws. Yep. And that time, Beverly Hills, very strict gun regulations, gun laws. New York, very, very strict gun laws. Chicago, But yet, who all has the guns?
Absolutely. Well, and if you're a superstar in Los Angeles, I know this for a fact. I know that all their bodyguards are carrying,
Oh, absolutely.
and I know they're all carrying high capacity magazines,
Oh,
and I know they got anything they want,
mhm.
and nobody asks any questions because they got money.
That's so true.
And it's crazy. What a cool experience, though. Like, that had to be a really awesome. You had to learn so much, like how to deal with difficult people, how to stay humble, how to keep your heart rate low, how to,
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine. You've ever seen those charts of like the brain, and it's like executive function, and then it's like the midbrain
Mhm.
function, and then survival.
Yes.
Right? And our brain breaks down into 3 different groups. And I think that would be a really hard job. I mean, it's called executive protection, to keep your brain in that executive functioning all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and you're tired and you're worn out because it's boring. It's not glamorous.
No,
It's not like
no.
in
Kevin Costner, Bodyguard.
That's what I was gonna say. Exactly what I was gonna say. It's not like that, right? Where it's all like sex and gunfighting. That's not what it is. And so you're bored, and then having to deal with people like kings and ultra wealthy people and their snobby friends and kids and all that stuff.
Strap handlers. That was
The what?
strap handlers.
What is that?
So you have your main principals,
Okay.
and your principals normally have 6 or 7 guys that are hanging with them, and they're, I don't want to say mooching, but they're
Right.
mooching. They're with them. They're along for the ride. But then all of a sudden they became important. They become the protectees also. They think they become the protectees. Oh, Stacy, go. Don't come. I need this. And you're like, no, I'm with him. No, come. So you have to play those games.
Oh, geez.
Oh, it gets frustrating.
And subtly, probably too, right?
Yes. And then they also try to tempt you, especially the Saudis. They would always try to tempt me, or they would test me, because since I was going to be with the princess, they want to find out what my core values were. So they say, Stacy, we are going to go look. The princess wants to go to a club next week. Okay. And then, because you do advance work, you go and look at the layout of the building, you look at the exits, you try to find out, A, B, and C, D. So I remember being brand new, and they said, Stacy, tomorrow night we're going to this club and we're going to check it out for the princess. So I went and go back and told the team leader, hey, I'm going to go do this. And they're like, oh, no, you're not. Now look at them. No, they're testing you. They want to get you out of this. They want to take you to this scenario, and then they're going to ask you, see if you want to have a drink. And they want to see how far you will go in order to accommodate the protectee. And then so I went back and told Mohammed, I'm sorry, I can't go. My team leader says I have to prepare for this, prepare for something else. And you see the sly smile creep up on his face. And you say, okay, I passed that test. And then there'll be another test that I'll have to pass. So it was like, it was a bunch of little different tests. And then once I finally checked all the boxes, and they left me alone.
They let you do your job finally?
Correct.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah.
They were vetting you constantly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was fun. I mean, I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. I have had great experience, but the bodyguard work, my father used to say, Stacy, when do you get a real job? But I mean, I had fun for 8 years, and I got to see the world and see different cultures, experience life, and it prepared me for what I did next.
Well, where was the scariest place you ever were while you were protecting someone?
Oh, in the movie theater. That's it.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
We had the one particular family, a royal family there, and there were some individuals that didn't care for, recognize that they were Muslim, and they wanted to get into it. So I was fortunate in my career as a bodyguard that I didn't have any close calls. I mean, I did stuff in the Caymans, and there was times where, like, you think you see something, and so you kind of steer the protectee out of that way. But I never had any type of. We had potential kidnapping in Florida, but that never came to fruition.
Okay. Wow, that's crazy. So now you've got a bachelor's, a master's, and you've got how many, like 8 years experience as a bodyguard. What'd you do next?
And that's what I was trying. When I hit that crossroad, I was frustrated with the executive protection, because I was always on the road. You live out of suitcase. You're living someone else's life without the glamour. Like, for example, if I was with a family down in the Cayman Islands on Christmas, you're waiting for them to exit the room so that we can go do something. Otherwise, you're standing post and you're waiting. And so it's like, oh, you're in the Cayman Islands. You must be. No, it's, yeah. So
Just sweating.
you're sweaty, yes, and you're like, I'm missing you, yeah,
Yeah, and I'm missing my family, and here's Ryan.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And where's the bathroom? No. So with that being said, I had hit that crossroad where, okay, I need to do something else. And I started thinking, where's my passion? My passion was kids and trying to keep them safe. I don't know, it was just something that's maybe just being a female. That was what's ingrained in me. And I started thinking about the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration.
So let me ask you a question. At this time in your life, are you married? Are you single? Are you?
So I had one marriage. I got married when I was really young.
Okay.
Let's see, 20. So got married when I was 21.
Okay.
And that last hot flash moment. And let's see, right when I became a bodyguard is when we were splitting up.
Okay.
And so during my bodyguard years, I was single.
All right.
And so going into DEA, I was single.
Okay. Yeah, because I was in my mind while you were talking through this. I'm like, how do you have a family? How do you? Because you talk about family, but I mean, I get families, also your own parents and all that other stuff going on. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this would be impossible.
You're absolutely correct.
It would be impossible.
But there was a lot of men. Well, most of the bodyguards were men. Were married. Or a lot of them were married.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But
sure.
there's a lot of sex on the road.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's that whole what happens TDY. It's
correct.
Like TDY type of
correct.
Type of
the 50-mile rule. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a tough environment. I could see where it would be super challenging too. So yeah, it's probably a good thing you were single.
It was.
Make it easier. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how old are you when you transitioned from bodyguard work to start applying for the DEA?
I got into DEA when I was old. So what, 32-ish, 31-ish?
Okay. That's not old, just for the record. That's not old.
Well, 36 is when you're cut off, but it was old back then. And when I went to the academy, there was a lot of younger candidates there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So filled out an application with the DEA, didn't tell anyone, and they actually hired me. And when you apply for the DEA, it's a year and a half, 2 years to get on. I was fast tracked to a year and a half. I was fortunate, and then was able to pass all the tests, and went into the academy February of 2001.
Okay.
Took us 16 weeks in the academy, got out, and I was assigned to El Paso, Texas. I actually chose El Paso, Texas, out of the list that I had.
Rock and roll, right?
But I liked it.
I would too. I mean, that's what. Yeah, I mean. No, there's a difference between people who say they're a cop and people who are real cops, and the real cops go where the action is.
Yeah. So El Paso, Texas, I had a phenomenal time down there. El Paso, Texas, you have Ciudad Juarez across from it in Mexico. Ciudad Juarez at the time, the crime was jumping up, the murders were really kicking up, but El Paso was very, very safe. The cartels kept everything south of the border. Even though they would creep across the border, they'd send their kids across the border in El Paso and their families. All the bloodshed took place in Ciudad Juarez.
That's why they kept it safe.
That's right.
They put their families
Absolutely.
in there. Yeah.
But that's when all the drugs were coming through. Back in that day, you had if you've seen Narcos, the Mexican part of it, you have Amado Carrillo Fuentes, Lord of the Skies. He had already passed. He was getting a facelift, and he died on the table. His brother took over. His brother was crazy, Vicente Carrillo Fuentes. Well, he was controlling that corridor, the Chihuahua corridor at the time. Well, Sinaloa cartel was starting, and Chapo was rising in power. They were starting to try to fight for that territory. So I was down there, and that's where I learned the trick of the trade. I learned border security. I would be called out in the middle of the night to respond to an illegal bringing in over 50 pounds of marijuana into the country. Go out there and apprehend him, arrest him, and he went through the proper channels, got adjudicated, sat in jail, and the rest is history for him. But I also learned how to do undercover work. I did undercover work for the FBI at the time frame for their drug unit, and I also built large conspiracy cases. So I had the best time down there learning the tricks of the trade and being a real, true working agent.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about, let's talk about, there's so much to unpack there. Border security, undercover. Let's start with undercover.
Like,
Let's talk about working undercover. Talk to me about what it takes to work undercover.
it takes cojones. It takes with DEA. What happens is that you don't really get any training. They just send you out there and say, "Go buy some dope."
Wow.
Yeah, and what you got to do is just be able to bluff your way through it. And there's people say absolutely not, but back then you pretty much as a new agent you had to go out there and try it. So what I did was the FBI had an ecstasy case, and they wanted me to go in and go into these raves and try to buy ecstasy. So I had blonde hair, red hair, blue streaks, long braids, really got into it. But, I'd go and talk to people, chat people up and see if they had anything. Then I advanced to the level where I was trying to buy what's called a boat, 1,000 pills. And that's when you get into that little middle level. And you're not dealing with the cartel members really. I was dealing with more of the younger kids, military personnel, individuals that were loosely affiliated with the cartel.
Okay.
There was times though they would try to push me into using drugs. I didn't care for that.
Yeah.
That made me feel icky because you had to act like you are taking the drug. And there's a point where you're like, I actually feel like a real drug dealer. You have to look yourself in the mirror. After you like to say you're in a rave or you're at one club the whole night, you're dealing with these type of individuals. And I don't know, I didn't care for undercover work. It just made me feel icky.
Yeah. I can see that. I read that book. Well, I can't remember the name of the book. You'll know it when I say it. It was about the ATF agent who went undercover with the Hells Angel, and he became like a fully patched member.
Right. I haven't read it, but I know.
It just left me.
Right.
I remember I read that book pretty early. So we used to have a really big motorcycle gang problem here in Great Falls. Like it used
Really?
Yeah, it used to be bad. And there was a kidnapping, and there was gunplay and a whole bunch of crazy stuff back in probably 2004, 5, 6,
Mhm.
7, right in that time frame. And there was a turf war kind of between, I think it was, if I remember right, it was the Banditos and the Hells Angels, and it was pretty rough. So anyway, I read that book because I was kind of curious, like, hey,
Mhm.
what's up? And one thing I learned when I read that book, because I always wanted to do undercover work when it was, I call it the Miami Vice effect.
Yes.
I grew up watching Miami Vice.
Yes.
Don Johnson was,
Mhm.
well, he still is my hero. I mean, he wears super cool suits and has
Absolutely.
a Bren 10.
Absolutely.
I mean, just doesn't get it, and lives on a boat with an alligator.
In the cross shoulder rigs.
Oh yeah. I mean, and the Ferrari. I mean,
And the women.
what was the alligator's name? I forgot. Anyway, his alligator had a cool name.
Yes.
And he fed it dog food. Anyway, I thought I grew up in that in the 80s, and all I could think about when I got into law enforcement was, I was going to be Don Johnson just in a colder climate, So I was going to be wearing like cool pants.
The thicker leather pants.
No, cool. The hiking pants, like
Oh.
like kind of like a Los Angeles version.
Okay.
I would drive like a 4Runner.
That's right.
Something like that. But anyway, so I get into it, and I read that book, and that book, I think, seriously, and this is tongue in cheek, but it kind of saved my life in a way, because I read that book and I realized I would never work undercover.
Right.
And the biggest reason is because of what you just said. I knew I could not fake being a criminal.
Right.
If I ever saw a child get neglected in front of me, abused, I couldn't laugh about it. I couldn't blow it off. I'd reach over and I would grab you by the throat and I'd choke the life out of you
There you have it.
with my
Yeah.
bare hands. And I was like, I can't do that work. I'll go to prison. I will go to prison. But you know what I would always fascinate with? Being the surveillance person. Whoever the cover person was for the person undercover, listen to The Wire. I was like, I could be that person, because I'd be the person when stuff, when shit hit the fan, I'd rush in and do work. I could be that person, but I could not be the undercover. There's no way. I do not have a poker face for that. I don't. You hurt a woman or a child in front of me, and I'll break your jaw for you. I mean, it's just going to happen.
Well, I was fortunate I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
There was times where there's one time I had to get in I broke every rule. And I broke every rule that you're not supposed to pertaining to with my surveillance team. You're not supposed to go into an apartment. You're not supposed to take off without at least signaling where you're going. And there's one time when I went into the apartment and was trying to make the deal happen. Eventually got in the car and we were driving towards the border. And I'm hoping that my team is following.
And you're hoping that they're going to follow you
and we're
across the border.
We're getting closer to the border. I'm like, oh no, what are we doing? You know, does he know who I am? And I'm thinking, okay, I'm thinking, okay, how am I get out of the car? Roll out of the car. And he gets to the next. There's one more exit, and I'm already sweating it out. And sure enough, he turns, and I'm like, okay. Well, I didn't know my surveillance team had lost me.
Oh no.
They had no idea where and I was wearing a wire, but the wire got too far away.
And are you carrying a gun? Or
Yes.
Are you?
Yeah. That was when I was carrying my baby Glock. What model was it? It was the Glock. It was the early edition of 9mm, but it's the thicker one.
Oh, the 26.
Yes.
Yeah.
And carrying it in the front.
Yeah.
So, and then baggy clothing on top of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did have that. But I'm thinking if I'm going to Mexico, I have a gun, you know, oh yeah, it was going to break bad.
Well, and it's such a risk with an undercover carrying a gun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I worked I worked internet crimes against children, and I realized how stressful undercover work was because I would put young cops, because we always had to find young cops to fit the bill for being underage.
Yeah,
and I had to put them in harm's way to get them on the wire to close the deal. You know, the whole thing. And, you know, you're praying to God they don't touch them. You're praying to God they don't, you know, grab them, do any of those things. And in some of those situations, you know, some we could arm them, some we couldn't. I was always a big advocate of arming undercovers. I was always like, the case is not worth that, you know. But there was situations where you'd run into you just had to deal with what you had.
Yeah.
And it was such a struggle. But I remember just the weight of that. I remember anytime I had an undercover operation, because I was like the case agent for the whole thing.
Okay.
And I worked for an organization, was Great Falls Police Department at the time, that was very much like, you run the case, we trust you.
Right.
So which was good, right? Because then I did it. But I mean, I remember thinking like all those things you talked about, I'd be like, okay, there's a potential they could end up in this hotel room. So we'd go do, you know, ahead and do site security on it. And I'd have to figure out like what breaches that door.
Yes.
Like what is an instant breach to that door? Not a, you know, 2-second, like a split second breach and we're in, you know, and then like going to the hotel and, you know, building relationships. I used to build relationships with all the hotels in town because you never knew which hotel you were going to have to do an op in.
Right. Because
you wanted that to be on their terms. So they felt comfortable. So they talk. And so you'd go in there and I mean, I remember one time I had some master ways of getting into hotels and I was able to do it, you know, at a split second. And, you know, but what if you don't grab the right key or, you know, just all the stress and like you'd go and test it and pray and just.
That's because you're responsible for your UC, your undercover.
A life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's extra. I mean, regardless, the case itself is stressful. But knowing that you have someone's life in your hands, if that breaks bad, what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? That's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. And it was, you know, one of the things that was nice about internet crimes against children is 9 times out of 10, 95% of your case was done virtually. So the only undercover part you usually had to do was the takedown. You just had to get them to a spot and take care of business. Yeah. Because that was a great part about it, was because they would talk online forever. But as it got more and more advanced, they started to get smarter and they wouldn't talk unless it was face to face. And so you had you had to go into the full undercover role and do it. And I didn't get a ton of training either. I mean, I went to a few schools and I worked with a lot of the dope cops and tried to learn from them. The problem with them though is and God bless them, they were doing their mission,
Mhm.
but their priorities were out of whack.
Right.
Their priorities was, dope on the table. So there was a lot more things they would fudge
Mm-hmm.
or things they would do. The other thing we had to worry about, especially with females, is I couldn't present a pretty or good looking female to them
Mm.
because if I did, it was a defense. Oh,
Ah.
I actually was really after her. Look at her.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I ran into that element. And the problem is I found that when you're dealing with females in the undercover dope world, they're oftentimes pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And actually in the dope world, that works very, very, very well.
Yes, it does.
Because it manipulates men who are dealers very quickly.
Yes.
Because they are focused on that and
Yep.
not focused on the deal. So when I was trying to steal people to do it,
Mm-hmm.
I had to really be careful with that. So I'd be like, okay, listen, I don't need you to wash your hair for the week. I need a hoodie. I need you in baggy clothes. No makeup. Let's rub some dirt on you. And I mean, literally,
Yeah.
rub some
Yeah.
dirt on you.
Yeah.
I want you to look like you're on crack.
Mhm.
Let's put a black label over one of your front teeth. Let's do something to make you look, terrible. But I just remember the psychology of the whole thing was so complex. And I have tremendous respect for people working undercover. Tremendous respect.
It also it depends on the dealer too.
Mhm.
It seems like your lower level, mid level, but your higher level dealers, you have to do whatever it takes to get that person get their interest.
Right.
So if you need a beautiful woman to get that level,
Absolutely.
then, but yes, I remember hearing about that of some defense attorneys would use that. No, he was attracted to her, so that's why he did that. That's entrapment, Yes.
Oh yeah. And they would throw, and here's the problem is judges will fall for that.
Oh yeah.
Judges will fall for that entrapment argument based on a pretty woman.
Mhm.
And you're going, are you kidding me? He just bought a child, or he bought 2,000 fentanyl pills, and you're putting this attractive thing in the
Yeah,
equation.
it's craziness.
And it's like, no, they still did the act. And I mean, I realize my wife will agree, men are dumb. I mean, but I mean, it's you're still responsible for your actions.
Absolutely.
And holy cow, the complexity of those cases. So in that case where you get turned off in the exit right before the border, how did that end?
It took about 8 hours to make the deal happen. We were waiting for 1,000 pills a boatload, and I ended up going. They dropped me off at a restaurant. They said, "Wait here." Okay, and I ended up waiting for a couple hours. We didn't think the deal was going to go, and they would make phone calls, and they're like, "No, we're coming, we're coming." What was happening is that they were coordinating with someone out of Mexico, and that person was going to body carry those pills across the international border and then meet me at a certain location. Long story short, we were able to achieve it. And it was one of the larger ecstasy rings. And we were able eventually round up 7 people. But it took a long time to process and to find people in Mexico and bring them back and to get them extradited and get them adjudicated in the United States. That was one of my cases. I worked with the FBI. FBI had a different protocol on their undercover agents. They had to go to a school. I think back then it was like 3 months. And they didn't have time to wait 3 months. And that's why they reached out to DEA and said, "Hey, hello, there's Stacy." Yeah.
That's awesome. Whether you're into getting fit or staying fit or just having fun with the family, join the Peak Health and Wellness Center today. With 2 great locations in Great Falls, they're here to serve you. If you like weightlifting, functional fitness, or enjoy a wide selection of cardio equipment, the Peak has everything you need. They also offer classes for all ages and fitness levels. The Peak even has a daycare for those busy parents out there. Go check out the Peak today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, 1 cup and 1 bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and the choice for all your construction needs is Builders First Source. They even have an automated home builders solution for all of your construction needs. Go to 826 Northwest Bypass in Great Falls and check them out today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. You'll be floored. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems of Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems of Montana today. Everybody needs a good insurance plan. Whether it's for home or auto insurance, check out Heinbaugh Agency. Eric Heinbaugh is a local agent focused only on customer service, not sales. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. You know, I think actually, I truly believe this. I think anybody who's listening to this, if you're in law enforcement, and I don't care what work you're going to do, I don't care if you think you're just going to be a SWAT jock for the rest of your life or whatever it is you're going to do, you need to go to undercover schools. You need to learn how they work, how they operate, how they think, what they do. Because I'll tell you, just listening to The Wire, I learned so much about criminal behavior.
Oh, yes.
I learned about, all these things. I remember I would talk to my wife about the case, is afterwards, and after it'd be over, and I'd be like, yeah, it's really intense, or listening to The Wire, or I was chatting this person in, and this stuff. And it was interesting too, like men's perspective of danger and women's perspective of danger, or men's perspective of when a deal's going to go, or women's are totally different.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Totally different.
It's intuition. A person can be on scene and watch for the body language, the eyes, and the person listening on the wire is not going to pick up on that. And so and it doesn't matter if it's man or woman or something. They're going to pick up on telltale signs that your surveillance team, your person listening on the wire is not going to pick up on. Females, though, I do believe females have if they're in tuned with their body, they can pick up on, their intuition kicks in.
Absolutely.
And that's what I had to use when I was down in El Paso, was my intuition. If I started doubting my intuition, so when I got in trouble. But if I went with it, then I was pretty much good to go.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. So you're in El Paso, and what other adventures did you have when you were down there?
So I was working a large marijuana case. I was blessed with a good confidential source, and they were running loads of 800 to 1,000 pounds of marijuana to Chicago. Now, back then, a pound of marijuana in Ciudad Juarez would go for $50 a pound. You cross it over to the United States, it can go as high as $100. You take it all the way to Chicago, it would go for $800 a pound. So there was.
So it's this kind of like the inverse of the same as the fentanyl now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so this was a larger marijuana drug trafficking organization pushing lots of pounds to Chicago and to New York. Confidential source would give me the tips of when it's happening. Long story short, then we'd see the money's coming back down from Chicago. We were tipped that there was a shipment of $2.3 million coming back, plus or minus, in a tractor trailer. So I put out a BOLO of, hey, the tractor trailers come down, don't know exactly. We had a little bit of a description, but didn't know, we didn't have all the identifiers. We let El Paso PD know, and we let the Texas DPS know, and everyone set up. Well, DPS did a traffic stop and stopped a vehicle and got $700,000 that night. Wrong vehicle. The El Paso stopped a vehicle, they got $1.2 million. Wrong vehicle. Our truck came in the very middle of the night. We walled it off, and there's literally $2.3 million in boxes. But eventually, they ended up getting my source killed.
Wow.
Long story short.
Oh wow!
That
You
was
had a source killed.
I had a source killed.
Holy cow.
Yeah, one of my partners, and I didn't know this till later on. So the seizure took place. Whenever the drug trafficking organizations, they can lose lots of dope. Maybe someone will lose their life every now and then, but if they lose money, whoever loses money, then they're out to find out, is there a snitch, and they're out for blood. So they were trying to track how did this seizure take place. They were asking for my source to come down to Mexico, and we kept saying, do not go down there, just wait it out, do not go, do not. Long story short, my partner that helped me do this stop made a comment and says, is this the money? He said it, and the driver picked up on that one comment, and he went back to the cartel and said they knew it was coming. And that's why they suspected my source. They were suspecting several people, but they narrowed it down to my source. My source was a famous smuggler. Who's a notorious smuggler. He went down to Mexico months later. They set him up as an ambush. Got in a huge shootout in Ciudad Juarez. Chihuahua police were involved, shooting out. They were corrupt. Long story short, they did a gangster style, shot him in down the road on the streets. The source survived. Then got him to a hospital. His wife went down there, and he had said, tell her, and it had a code name for me, tell her it was such and such, such and such. Long story short, he ended up passing, and I was devastated because that was my investigation. And we kept telling him, do not go, because we were just worried about that.
Oh, yeah.
But he was too cocky and felt too confident. And that's what ended up. So I ended up losing my first source.
Wow.
So.
Holy cow, that's intense. So you said your first source.
Yes, we had another source in Afghanistan where he was beheaded. And that's a blue on blue situation, which is a very interesting story. But yeah.
So after El Paso, where do you go next?
So I was selected for a tactical team. Well, I had a threat against me down in El Paso. FBI had received intelligence that it was loosely linked to this investigation, marijuana case, but they were looking at getting the female that was working the investigation, lure her to the border, and then take her across the border and torture her to find out what other information. And the FBI said it was me. And so DEA kind of got all riled up, obviously. They were trying to figure out what to do with me. Meanwhile, I had put in for a tactical team. And so the timing of it was perfect. I ended up being selected for that tactical team where I relocated to Virginia. So that means the threat went away. They weren't able to achieve their goal. So I relocated to Virginia, and I was the first and only female selected for the tactical team to go back and forth to Afghanistan during that time frame. So that was in 2000 and end of 2004, beginning of 2005. The war had started over there. And what we had learned was that the Taliban / Al-Qaeda was moving heroin to international countries, and they were getting the monies the narcotics proceeds that they received from the sale of heroin, they were bringing it back and then taking the money to China for buying materials to build explosive devices to go after our military. And so they wanted DEA.
Always China.
It's always China, yes.
It's always China.
So they wanted DEA to go in and start looking at these international heroin dealers and to start trying to eliminate them. And what we did, and what I mean by eliminate, to destroy the labs and to build international conspiracy cases against them.
It's not assassinate them?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not us.
All right.
It's not done. That's a different agency. So no, and that's what we did. I was the first on the first team, had boots on the ground.
Okay.
Of March of 2005. So it was it's a 4-man team with a team leader. So there was 5 of us. 2 teams went over at the same time. First time I was there, I was based out of Kabul. The other team was based out of Bagram. And what our job was to seek out these individuals and find out where their labs were, and then we coordinate with DOD.
Why? So I think I know the answer, but I want to ask, because why the DEA? I mean, you've got special operations over there, you've got SEALs, you've got Delta, you've got all these assets. Why did they decide that they needed to deploy tactical teams from the DEA, which is a you know, basically can operate inside the United States
Mhm.
type organization to go over and do this. What was give me the why do we do that? I think that's important.
Go back and back in the early '90s, the DEA had a program called Operation Snowcap. So what they did was they put out an advertisement for agents that wanted to apply for these teams to go into South America and go in and find the cocaine labs and destroy them. They go to, I think, Fort Benning. Pretty much the like ranger training. The military would train these agents, and then they would literally go down to South America and do these type of operations. And it was very successful for a longer period of time. And it was well known in the DEA world, military world, that DEA has the mindset and the capabilities of doing this. Because of there was a when we had a new administrator, he cut the program, killed it, and but there's those individuals that were team leaders. They always remember the program. So when Afghanistan came along, and we knew that intelligence had found out that the monies being used for the heroin sales were being turned around, pushed back into the country for harmful things against our military soldiers, they're like, DEA can do this.
Okay.
DOD, ODA operations, they don't go after drugs.
Right.
So they wanted to form that tactical team again to go after the drugs, to build the investigations, to actually we have special groups that can do international cases and bring them back to the United States, and then in a court of law convict them. That's what they wanted to attempt to do. However, DOD didn't want us over there at the time frame because they were building bridges. It was basically they were looking at literally building bridges for the communities and just building liaisons with the different Afghan communities and throughout Afghanistan. They thought that we're going to come in and disrupt everything, and then they'd be back to square one. So when we had boots on the ground in 2005, we needed helo support. And they were trying to push it off, basically wore them down. We did a couple operations with them. Well, meanwhile, the war was divided up where each country that was working there had an assignment. United States was building the judicial system. The Brits were building or actually looking at the drug trade. The Canadians had assignment, Australians, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then we ended up teaming up with the Brits. And when they were going out on their raids and they were finding large caches of opium, they would destroy it. Well, we're like, you know what? We can team up with them and build the investigation based on the evidence that we found on site, find out who it leads us to, and then go in and arrest those drug lords, and then build investigations against them and go for the larger conspiracy. So that's how DEA kind of started operating there. And the program lasted for quite a while. I think 2011, 2012 till they finally shut it down.
Wow.
But it was when we went over there though, it was thinking back what we did. I mean, we didn't have the right equipment. We didn't have helo support. We didn't have transportation. It was bare bones. And we were very fortunate that we didn't get anyone killed on our shifts. Eventually we did. Well, people ended up dying, but it was after I had left the teams. But we went in there. We were ragtag, and you go back and you look at the first pictures and stuff of the teams, and you're like, "What were y'all doing? What were y'all thinking?" It was ragtag.
So what do you mean by you don't have the proper equipment? Like, give me an example. Like,
so like, okay, I'm gonna stay over there for 3 or 4 months. So I'm bringing seven days worth of clothes. I am bringing maybe some metal plates. I do have my long gun. I do have my handgun with me. Do I need a helmet over there? Maybe I'll need a helmet over there. What do I need on belt stuff, equipment-wise, boots, Okay, I'm going to go down to Shields and find me some boots and stuff. It was literally,
wow.
Yeah. You didn't have a packing list. You didn't have, and so I'm like,
So the DEA is not like this. Like, hey, Stacy, you're going to Afghanistan. Come on down to the quartermaster. We got all your kit. You're off you go. You're good to go. We've taken care of everything. Top of the line. It wasn't like that.
Very beginning, they did give us some green uniforms, and they gave us a Bowie knife, and So and they gave me a helmet, which is way too big.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, it was, well, see,
yeah.
so we had to go through training. We also went to Fort Benning and went to the basic the Army, the Puerto Rican National Guard's who trained us.
Okay.
That's how
Okay.
you can tell DOD did not want us there.
Wow.
And not taken back from the Puerto Ricans training us. But with that being said, and I remember being in this foxhole and I'm trying to, because they had you had to pass this, their gun range, their gun test, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm in this hole and I can barely see. So they give me these, what do you call them? The
Sandbags?
Sandbags.
Yeah.
So I'm on these sandbags trying to get balance. I've got this helmet that's way too big and they're like popping up and it's like and I'm trying to shoot. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, nope, you have to wear this helmet because it's, Army protocol. I'm like, yeah, it would be hilarious movie if you were to see what we did.
Sounds like it.
It would. Yeah.
Sounds like it. So you're over in Afghanistan, and so tell me about the cases and how it went.
So we would go in with these we did have armored vehicles, and when we had movements, we would drive around. We were literally outside the wire looking for targets. We did have interpreters, so they would lead us.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. Everything went through an interpreter.
Okay.
Luckily, we were fortunate that we had some good interpreters.
Yeah.
Because eventually you had people that infiltrated. You had a lot of bad interpreters that were actually working for the other side. We were blessed in the very beginning. And so they would say, this is Haji such and such, Haji Dove, this is his lab and stuff like that. So we would actually build an operation around where we thought, where the coordinates led us to, where we believed that there was a lab. And then we would present to the big army. And we got labs at such and such location. We would respectfully ask for a helo support. So once we finally got them on board, they would helo us in to about probably 2-3 miles away from the heroin labs themselves. We would land and we'd hike up the mountain and then find the labs. But when we were normally approaching, the workers would flee. The Afghans would flee. I mean, because you didn't have the actual Taliban right there on site. But we knew we had to get in and get out before the gunpowder came. So we go find the labs. I loved gathering up the evidence. That was one of my specialties. A lot of the guys would lay out explosive devices, get what we needed done there, and then take off and then detonate the devices, destroy the labs, and then hustle back to the helicopter before the Taliban or the groups would start coming after us. And so we would do these type of operations. Now, when we teamed up with the Brits, that was a whole different, because the Brits then would also come with us, and they had boots on the ground, and they made us look. It was very sad because I'd just say that some of our guys weren't in the best shape. So hiking and running and stuff, the Brits were like jackrabbits. And then where's the Americans? Oh, they're way back there with the red cheeks and they're huffing and puffing. So we did embarrass ourselves initially. And then the teams evolved.
Right.
We started getting our act together, and we started figuring out this is how you work in a war zone. And we eventually became a dignified and we looked like a actually strong unit.
So what happened with the informant who was beheaded?
So that was second or third tour. Each tour was different.
How long are each of these tours?
4 months each.
4 months.
We rotated in and out. When we'd go in and do 4 months, and then we were supposed to return stateside and then have downtime and do training. Well, normally we were relocated to Haiti or Tajikistan or somewhere else, because word was getting out that DEA was having these tactical units, and we would be willing to help other governments. So we're being basically pimped out to other sites. And that was a whole another can of worms. But with that being said, the time that we had blue on blue situations, that's when I learned that in a war zone or in a foreign country, sometimes different government agencies doesn't have your best interest or doesn't have your back.
Right.
I always thought if you go, it's USA all the way.
Right.
Well, it depends on what the agenda is and what's the mission. And at times when another agency has a different mission, they don't want anyone to get in their way. And when you have a confidential source that actually steps in and steps in another agency's mission, that person can get hurt. And that's what opened my eyes of not everyone has the same priorities.
Right.
And that was very, very difficult for me because that's when I knew that some of those old stories about different agencies and maybe some of the dirty dealings they've done in the past could actually be true.
Mhm. We took a break coming back. So talk to me. You're talking about this informant in Afghanistan, and then go ahead with that.
So we had it was a scenario where he was providing information about a possible drug trafficker bringing in a load of drugs. It was going to be in a compound. So we had, at the time, we were breaking bread with a certain different agency. And we say, hey, we got the source. We think drugs are coming in. We're going to rate it. Would you like to join us? The agency said, no, we know who your source is. He's not believable. Okay. Well, then we went to ODA. Hey, you guys want to? And they're always up for fun.
What's ODA?
What does this say? It's part of the special ops. What is ODA?
Okay. I don't know.
Oh, I'm gonna have to Google that now.
Okay. Totally caught you off guard.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So it's part of the special force unit, but that's
Okay.
So yeah, they're always up for something. And we raided the compound. Didn't find the dope, but we found buried underneath the soil crisp $100 bills, packaged up. And then we found remote control parts of that they use for these little cars, and they make IEDs. And back then what they would do is that they would have the kids do the remote control, and the little car would go underneath a tank or whatever, and then they detonate it. And so then we were like, crisp $100 bills, bombing material. We just probably touched something that we didn't realize we were touching.
Right.
Because back then, I mean, you get a package and you know who the person is, but you can't do a lot of background information because there's just not. The databases, you didn't have the intelligence of knowing exactly who you were going after, all their bio. So we stumbled on something that, in the long run, ended up costing our source's life. So we raided the compound, found that material, figured out we connected the dots. This was someone else's person or someone's affiliate. And within, I would say, 48 hours, our source was found in the back of a vehicle and stuffed in a trunk, beheaded. And that was a message to us. After that, we were followed. We got onto a shooting. We were in another compound where we had Afghani law enforcement that was affiliated with this different agency, where we're getting shot at, drive-by shootings and stuff, phones being tapped, and it turned very, very ugly. Long story short, went all the way to D.C., went to Congress, and I was given a batch of paperwork and told, you keep this till, because there will be someday that you will be called before Congress to testify of what happened. Then I was pointed to liaison with this agency. Basically, what came down from DC is that y'all two will play together in the sandbox. You will like it, and there will be no issues from this point on. And then I was the liaison with them for temporarily. And the rest is history. So,
Oh. So can I be in the movie when they make it about you? Because this is going to be a really good movie. I just want a small role, just something cool.
give me my bodyguard.
Okay, cool. Or can I just like maybe be like a guy holding a gun, like just staring off somewhere, something cool.
That's right.
Can I do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Awesome. No,
because this is my first podcast, and you know, so yes, I owe you.
No, that's amazing. No, what a fascinating, what a fascinating journey. And it's funny. And it angers me, but I say funny figuratively. It doesn't matter what realm of law enforcement or military or whatever, but the politics that get involved, that get in the way of the inner workings is terrible.
Yes. Yes.
I try so hard. I know that there's politics in the organization that I lead. I know there is. But I try so hard to try to keep my people away from that. Like, I try to do everything I can to just let them do their job and not be a political influence over them when they're doing it. And I've been there. I've dealt with it. I've been called off major targets when I know we've got them. They're dead to rights, and you're just told to walk away, and you're never given a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got to be rough. And especially then being over there, and it's post 9/11, and it's it's the Toby Keith song, right? You're going over there and
Absolutely.
rage in hell,
Yes.
and then it doesn't take an hour, and the politicians start, they're like serpents, they're like damn snakes coming in there and screwing it all up.
Well, it's when you see that it gives you pause. You take a step back. Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing?
Right.
And then we see events takes place, and like, what the hell?
Yeah.
We're on the same team. This is America first. This is USA first. Rah rah.
Right.
And you realize sometimes that's not the case. And I try to balance things out. I'm a true Libra, so I look at both sides, and I can understand the other side of, we have a mission. This is our mission, and we're going to protect America, and we're going to do whatever it takes, no matter what. Well, meanwhile, you have different agencies going. They have a mission. I mean, with DEA, we always try to get along with everyone. I mean, we're cowboys, but we were cowboys, and we were flexible. But when you have just blatant obstacles, and then we get into harm's way, and we are losing people, then it's like, oh no, and that really opened up my eyes to the politics, and it was discouraging. It really left a bad taste in my mouth.
Oh, I can't imagine. I mean, the stuff that I've dealt with in my career is bad guys walking away, things like that. But like, it's a global war on terror, and you're on the front lines of it, and you're stumbling across good work. You're doing good things, and it's like that would be like a jackpot moment. It's like, whew.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's go,
Yeah.
fly in the black helicopters in the parade, because look what we found. And it's just, the more and more I see it, the more frustrated I get. I have a very, very deep-seated belief about that. And you say, things like, well, we found money. And when you start finding money, you start wondering yourself, okay, who's lining their pockets?
Mm-hmm.
And you start asking yourself that question. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the second you start finding money, you got to start questioning everything.
When you start finding American money,
Yeah.
and crisp $100 bills, then you know, okay,
Yeah.
those stories are true.
Yeah. So there's, what agency that come from, or who is supposed to get paid that needs to make sure they get paid.
Correct. Yeah.
Because it's one of the two.
Yes.
And it's just so aggravating. So, what'd you do after Afghanistan?
Afghanistan, then I was selected to go to South America. And so I ended up doing 4 tours to Afghanistan over a 3-year year span, and then relocated to Lima, Peru, which was also a story in itself, because when you go down there, I always wanted to go to South America. I'm the Hispanic of the family, and my Spanish is horrible. And so I'm like, I'm going to go to Peru. I'm going to be fluent. Yeah, that didn't happen either. So because the general that I started working with, or the liaison that I started working with, wanted to practice his English, so I used that as a crutch. But anyway, so my job down there was to help train the Peruvian narcotics officers, but also build their interception program. And what I mean by that is that Peru was looking to develop ways to intercept phone conversations. So you have to build their whole physical structure. You have to coordinate with the different telephone companies and get MOUs in place. You have to have the government's MOU. You have to have the telephone companies' MOUs, and make sure that everyone's on the same page. Then you have to build the judicial system around it. And that's what my project was. So I did that. We were down there for 5.5 long years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like straight?
Yes.
Oh, just living there and
live there. You have, you come back for a vacation. You get a certain period of time, several weeks off, where you can come back. It's called home leave.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, you live the Peruvian life.
Wow. Did you like it? Did you enjoy it?
It was a great experience, but with there's a lot of corruption. Everything works on bribes. Lima is like a second world country, whereas the rest of Peru is a third world country.
Okay.
And that third world country is beautiful. You have the Amazon, you have Machu Picchu. It's a beautiful country. But if there's so many illegal activities. There's illegal cocaine being shipped because Peru is one of you have three countries that cocaine comes from: Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia. And because you have to have the cocoa leaf, which is grown in the Andes. So Peru is built on illegal mining and cocaine trafficking and money laundering. They are if they would put their efforts into doing something legal, they'd be a first world country.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's sad. It all comes down to leadership, right?
oh,
They just probably don't have any.
it's interesting the different leaders that they've had.
Yeah.
And now they're struggling with communists
Oh, yeah.
socialism.
That communism and socialism thing's really taking hold in South America right now.
Well, we took our finger off back in the Bush era. Rightly so. We're looking at the Middle East. That's where the threat was coming from. But we never focused on our back door. And what we started seeing is that the terrorist organizations were creeping down South America, down in by Brazil and that region down there. Well, then you have Venezuela that was, they were training them. We never established the relationships that we should have established a long time ago. We would kind of go down there and pacify. We'd go down and touch the base in Colombia and Peru, but we were losing our foothold down there. Meanwhile, Russia was coming in. China's been coming in.
Right.
Israelis were coming in. When I was down there, I was dealing with the generals, and I had heard a comment when the Obama administration came in, and they said, America doesn't count anymore. Or at least not right now. Look towards the Russian, look towards the Israelis. And I'm like, what? And so when I started asking questions, I found out what they fear is what they respect. They did not fear the Obama administration.
No.
And we lost our footing there.
I'm glad that you said that. What they fear is what they respect. I think kind of the more liberal or moderate way of thinking in America was I hear this all the time. Obama was a great president. He was super articulate. He was super intelligent. He just knew how to speak to people. I've heard that about said about him a lot. And then and by contrast, you have Trump, and they were like, well, Trump's he talks like a thug. He's negative. He says terrible things about people. He's off the cuff, all these things. But the only time in my entire adult life, probably except for my early years during the Reagan administration, have we not been at war? Where we didn't create a new war,
Right.
was during the Trump era.
Right.
It was the only time.
You're absolutely correct.
And the rest of the time, Obama was he guy killed people on a daily basis. He was the drone king.
Mm-hmm.
If he didn't like you, he just flew a drone over your house and dropped a bomb on you and wiped you off the face of the earth. It was done.
And then we had Benghazi then.
In Benghazi, which was a total dumpster fire.
Yeah.
I had Colonel Bristol on here.
Oh.
Yeah. And he wouldn't talk about it, obviously, because there's NDAs and all those things.
Absolutely.
But he was in command of that whole thing. And you could just see, you could look into his eyes and see the scorched earth. Not a happy camper.
No, that was a horrible, horrible event that was preventable.
Oh, yeah. Very preventable.
Yes.
And preventable, I think, diplomatically, and then preventable by a strike, by doing what we were supposed to do and doing what we had all those people trained to do.
That event opened up my eyes because I had been working longer in the foreign arena than I had been working in domestically. And I started thinking, if something happens to us, if we're out on a mission and it breaks bad, who's going to come for us?
Right.
The government then during that era is like, this current administration, Obama administration, is going to leave us out there. And if it would depend on what kind of press they were going to get.
Absolutely.
And that's what his administration thrived on.
I totally agree. I totally agree. You know, it was interesting. Being in work in internet crimes against children during different administrations, because the presidential administration has a huge effect on internet crimes against children, because they tell the prosecutors what to go after, right?
Yeah.
And the one good thing about the Obama administration is they did give a directive that they were going to be aggressive on internet crimes against children.
Right.
But the Trump administration doubled down on that.
Oh, yes.
Way more aggressive.
Oh, yes.
But they were, I would give the Obama administration credit on that because it gave them good press. I mean, there's, although it's starting to change now, but nobody has sympathy for a pedophile going to prison. Like it's just not a thing.
That's true. Even the thugs, you know.
Yeah. No, yeah.
You go to jail, then you're done.
Criminals especially don't. I mean, in fact, I think the criminals do more so than most people. But the interesting thing about what you're talking about and what you're kind of describing to me is that we need to get a people of our country, the patriots of our country, every man and woman in our country to understand that is that there is peace through superior firepower and essentially respect.
Oh, absolutely. The one thing that Trump did, I mean, he kept everyone off balance in the foreign arena. They respected him. And they respected him because they had to, because he was so unpredictable and if he was going to do something, he did it. Yep. He didn't draw that red line in the sand and then they stepped all over it and then he didn't do anything. No, if he drew that line and they didn't even come close to it. And that's what made him such a great president when it came to foreign policy. Yeah. And foreign policy is so important, especially nowadays, because you look at our foreign policy right now. It's horrendous.
Right.
We have abandoned our allies. We have, look at our disgraceful departure from Afghanistan. That's just for example of what we did. We sent a signal to the world that we are weak, and now this is why we have everything taking place.
You're probably the fourth or fifth guest I've had on this podcast. Now, mind you, most all of them are local people, right? That were intimately involved in Afghanistan in one way or another. And it was a call. It was a calling for them when that happened that they needed to take action. Because that's how disgraceful that lack of mission was.
It was, okay, so we had Bagram. Bagram was an airfield base that was secure. We had all of our assets there. When you're departing, you would exit out of Broughton. Now, occasionally you go out, you leave through a Kabul International Airport if you're going to go to Qatar or wherever. But that was the location for us. For the current administration to leave Bagram, exit it, give it over to the Afghanis, and then announce to the world that we were going to leave Afghanistan, leave our assets, and then try to get out through Kabul International Airport. My 15-and-a-half-year-old daughter could have planned it better.
Right.
That's how sad that was. And you got to. I always try to analyze it. What were they thinking? It doesn't make any sense to me, even to today. The loss of life there was no reason for that.
Do you think it was a thing where, because I'm convinced that Biden's a puppet. I'm convinced I'm convinced he's not steering the ship.
Correct.
Obama or someone else.
Obama's people still in place.
They're still steering the ship. And I've often thought about it in being in the world of politics. You get a lot of pressure sometimes. And sometimes you make a promise, campaigning that, by August of 2021, we're going to be out of there.
Right.
And it looked to me, just from the outside looking in, if I were to put myself in their shoes and say, okay, maybe it was promise time was up and the political pressure was like, you're getting out now.
Right.
End of story. And they get so wrapped. Biden he's not a military guy. He's never served. He's a career politician. He's never been in law enforcement. He's never been in the military. He's never done any of these things. So he doesn't have that mission set understanding to be the commander in chief. At least Trump has that business execute mindset. Like, you got to create a plan. You have to have a business plan. You have to create a mission. You have to get people to rally behind you, and you have to execute said mission. Biden doesn't have that experience.
No, but you have people in place, or you should have people in place. I mean, he's a career politician. He knows the story. He knows he should know how to run the ship. You put people in place that know how to do the job. And when you, like I said, Bagram was our base. That's where you exit from. That's where you're going to be. It's the safest. And for them to abandon it, and then don't get me started about leaving all of our equipment, because it'd been cheaper to leave it there than. I mean, it just the stupidity. It's just flat out stupidity.
Well, I think it's two things too. I think also they needed to shift their effort to Ukraine because they were that was what they wanted to put all their eggs in that basket for whatever reason. So I think that's another thing is they knew they couldn't focus on both things simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to just, okay, we're done with this because this is where we need to focus,
I don't disagree with leaving Afghanistan. I disagree with how we left it.
with the execution of it.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
and the Americans that were left behind, the interpreters that were left behind, the informants, the people that we promised we'd bring. I mean, it's the biggest joke in the world that there were people that fought and died and had their families murdered to protect our country.
Yes.
And they got left behind to be tortured and slaughtered.
Yes.
But yet we'll open our doors down south to anybody who walks across the border.
And that's what gives me chills right now. That
Yeah.
you're absolutely correct. Everything that we've done for the last 12, 15 years, all for naught.
Well, and the other thing is we lost all credibility. Like if we were to, and we're going to get hit. We're going to get hit from, we're going to get hit from the Chinese. We're going to get hit from Mexico. We're going to get hit from somebody now.
Yes.
Because we're super vulnerable. And when we have to do a hearts and mind thing, which we have to do, because we got to create informants to get in there to find the people. Because this isn't, if this were 1945, we'd fly over the top of them and drop an atomic bomb on top of them.
Right.
And we'd murder millions of citizens. Well, we're trying to be better than that. We're trying not to murder little babies and mothers and children.
Sure.
It happens in war, but we're trying not to do that. So then now, that's almost the only option they've left us with anymore. Because now no one's going to trust us.
No.
No one's going to work with us. They're going to be like, oh, we saw what you did in Afghanistan. We're not. Why are we going to play ball with you?
Correct. And you're seeing that. You're seeing that right now. That's why you're starting to see Saudi Arabia in their alliance with China, even Iran. That's unheard of. I mean, they're trying to, our U.S. currency is being impacted, and they want to destabilize our dollar. But when you see the Saudis shifting over to Russia, China, Iran, then people need to wake up.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
we will, if the U.S. dollar sinks, our economy's gone.
Oh, absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So you and I had a really cool introduction.
Yes.
You and I met a while back when I was sheriff, and I think we met before that, but when we really started to engage, when we were going to sign up one of my detectives as a TFO for DEA. And it was funny because I remember I was like, I don't want to do a federal TFO.
Yep.
And I think it was Jack was like, no, it's going to be a good deal. It's going to be a good deal. We'll have you. And we met over Zoom.
Yes.
Because it was like, I think it was in the middle of the COVID thing.
Okay. Well, I came to your office actually. And
You did one time, but
Yes.
our first meeting about it, we did over Zoom. And I think it was just because logistics or something. We just did it. And that was the thing at the time. But I remember I was really impressed. I was like, okay, wait a second. This is a different type of federal agent. This is you were reading the terrain, you were understanding the culture, and you were like good with it. My biggest gripe about TFOs is you lose them.
Yes.
Like you don't have much staffing as it is. You assign them to the DEA, the FBI, and like particularly in the FBI is like no bones about it. They're like, well, they're just an FBI agent now.
Yes. Oh, they're very rigid.
And it's like they're no messing around. Like, and I'm like, well, what if I got a big case? Can I steal them for like a week? And they're like, no. And I'm like, whoa, what does that do for me?
Yes.
And so anyway, you were really good about that, and I appreciated that.
No, it's I like to work in the gray. And the reason there's always wiggle room. And with us having a huge state, and we need to depend on each other, federals and the locals, we need to come together as a family and work together because we all had the same common goal: get crime off the street, get the drugs off the street, protect the community. So my philosophy was whatever it takes. And with if it meant giving you a officer, a sheriff, give him a TFO status, and he still operated in your backyard, and I had to physically drive up and check on him and making sure everything's good to go, then I would do that because that's what's important to the community.
Right.
At times, I think that federal agencies get the yo tango mio or the get on the high horse and like, we're the feds and what we say is most important. And that's baloney. We are all humans. We work together for the common goal. And so that was my philosophy throughout the state, is trying to do that.
Well, I remember I grilled you with like a whole bunch of like constitutional questions and what ifs, and you were awesome. It was like you wrote down a Jesse Slaughter biography when you did it, because you're like, yep, nope, that's not going to fly. Yep, we're going to do that. Sounds good. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I was impressed because I was like, I was nervous. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And I've got really great people, and I've got great leaders in my organization, and I give them a lot of autonomy. So they're asking me to take the meeting. So I'm like, I'm going to take the meeting because I trust them, you know? And then I was really impressed, and it was a great relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
I enjoyed it a lot because it gave us a further reach. So we didn't have to worry about county boundary to go get a bad guy. We just go get him, which I like.
Yeah.
I love that. And then, but other than that, it didn't operationally. And that was actually the cool part about it. When you take a dope cop and you make him a DE agent as a TFO, the mission is totally the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
just gives him more tools in the toolbox.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was ICAC, I worked with Al Kenzie, who's also been on this podcast, and he was my partner, and he was a Homeland Security agent.
Okay.
And did you ever work with Al? How he's a great agent. Like he's like you. He was a really hard working federal agent. Like total boots on the ground type of guy. And just a great human. Well, Al and I had worked together, so they finally said, well, we're going to make you an HSI TFO. And so I went to their little school and did their whole thing. And I had to go to this like custom school, because that was what I had to go to be a TFO, and had to learn about like how the whole jurisdiction, all boundaries worked, you know, like little stuff. Like if you drive down a road and there's no turnoffs, you have jurisdiction the entire way inside the country. That's still the border, you know, all those little, those little nuances. And it was actually, I mean, kind of a tough school. There was quite a bit to learn. Like you had to learn about maritime operations and all this
cool stuff.
It was weird. Yeah. I mean, but all the laws that go with it. So anyway, I made it through that, and I was just about to be, you know, sworn in as a HSI agent, and Trump got elected. And my captain at the time called me in, and he's like, yeah, we're not going to have you do that. And I said, what? And I'm like, I'm just going to be working. All it is so because in ICAC, you're always working. I mean, I had to go down to California for 2 weeks and chase a guy all over LA to catch him for 2 weeks, because that's where he was, you know, and there's no jurisdiction on the internet. And he goes, well, we're just really nervous now that Trump's got elected. They're going to have you work in immigration cases. I'm like, no, they're not. No, they're not. And they panicked and they pulled the rug out from underneath me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All that.
Yes. And I went through the whole process. It was crazy. But I think that was also in the back of my mind, was like, well, what are they going to be pulling my detective to do? And then it dawned on me, the cool part about DEA is that's what they do.
We have two things: money laundering and drugs.
Which they go together. Yeah. So it's not I mean, you're always working money laundering if you're working drugs. So it was kind of a exciting thing. And that's actually what kind of got me really excited about the DEA and working with you guys, was that you are so like mission driven.
Yes.
It's like,
yes,
this is what we do.
And you don't see us overstepping our boundaries unless we're asked to. U.S. Marshals will ask us to team up with them, and then we get deputized and stuff like that. But no, we have a solid mission. There's no gray area.
Yeah.
Drugs, money laundering.
And that's actually one cool thing about working drugs is it's a black and white thing.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. And it's illegal drugs and then some legal drugs, prescription pills and stuff like that. But it's not easy to confuse. And that's what always gets, you see these different agencies, they have so many things that they can be doing.
Yeah.
And they always get lured by the drugs. Well, let's go get the drugs because they want to get the assets. I'm like, stay in your lane. Yeah, you do have the ability to get drugs, but you have white crime to go after. You have immigration issues to go after. Stay in your lane.
Yeah. One of my old, he's a judge now, but one of my old prosecutors used to say, one thing I love about drug cases is it's not hard to argue when they're in your pocket. He goes, you never catch anybody with child abuse in their pocket.
That's point taken.
Definitely, and he's talking about like how they were, they're not always easy to prosecute, especially when you get into like the cases you worked, which were super complex and conspiracy and all that other stuff. But the actual possession case is not that hard to work.
They're very easy. I can't imagine working a child crime case of trying to prove that that person is doing what they're doing, and all the evidence that has to be gathered, and even the heartache that goes into it of having to watch of what's going on.
Yeah.
To me, that would be very, very difficult. And I take my hat off to you for doing those type of cases.
When the jail door slams as you leave after booking them in, it's worth it. When you hear that big loud sound of that big steel door slamming, you take a deep breath and you're like, yes, this is my purpose in this life.
I feel that.
It feels good. It feels good. So with all this life experience and everything, you retire from the DEA.
Mandatory retired.
Yes. So that means you are 37.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
I wish I was 37 with all this wisdom.
There you go. And so you retire from the DEA, and then you decide you're going to go into politics.
Yeah.
Stacy, what's wrong with you?
I still, and many people are asking me that. I still have that passion in my belly. I still want to fight for our country because we're in chaos. With that being said, I served almost 23 years with the DEA. I had a great career. If I wasn't mandatory retired at 57, I would still be doing it because I love the mission. And I love the fact that if we got dope off the street, we were saving a kid.
Right.
So with that being said, I had heard that Rosendale, he was doing his whisper campaign that he was going to run for the Senate. And I'm like, where do I fit in the scheme of all this stuff? And when I started looking around, I'm like, Rosendale's position is a federal position. He deals with the things at the federal level. That's where I dealt my things also. And I thought, this is a good transition. That would be a good home for me. But unfortunately, you have to campaign. And I'm not a politician. I'm not a millionaire. I'm about the people. And it seems like a lot of the politicians and they've lost what this is really all about. Power corrupts.
I agree.
And I'm seeing it more and more. And when I sit behind the scenes, it's very ugly. It's icky.
Yeah.
With the drug threat, with the drug traffickers, investigations, I knew who the target was. I knew what weapons they would be utilizing to shoot at me. There was a plan A, B, and C, and D. With the other side, the politics and stuff, you don't know who's friend or foe. You don't know when you turn around how deep that gash is going to be. And it's just you see the corruption in that, the power trips.
Oh, it's terrible.
It is.
It's horrible.
It really is.
It's good for you. I'm very, very proud that you're running. I really am. I think it's a great fit.
Thank you.
I like how when you campaign, I've heard you say this many times. It's like, well, why am I running for Congress? Well, I came from being a federal agent. It's a natural fit. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this podcast was I wanted to frame what you meant by that. Because very rarely do you get to explain your history like you did today.
Mm-hmm.
When you started explaining your history that, you were fighting on the border, going back and forth over the border, working undercover work, drug deals. You're doing the narco-terrorism thing down in South America. You're in Afghanistan, the global war on terror. Well, frame those three, and that's only three of your experiences. We could talk about dozens more. But if we just take those three international experiences that you had, and we frame those in today's conversation, That's what today's conversation is about.
Absolutely.
So you have that experience because you fought and lived in the war zones, but you did it from a different perspective. I mean, nothing against our military.
Mhm.
They're the most amazing people on earth. I have tremendous respect for them, but it's a different perspective that you have.
Yes.
Be-
Yes.
Because the military doesn't have the United States Constitution. They don't have to deal with the amendments. They don't have to deal with, you're dealing with all of that. So you have this very local by the United States,
Sure.
local flavor to it
Yes. Yes.
that it's relatable.
Yes. It seems like, and I don't know if I'll be successful or not, but it seems like what I'm doing now, my experience in DEA has prepared me for this step. With the different experience and stuff. We do have terrorism walking across our southwest border. We have a problem with our northern border. We have a problem with our foreign policy. We have our national debt problem, where I used to have to run the teams under a continuing resolution, which is sad. With that being
What
said,
does that mean? You should explain that.
so when Congress can't get their act together and balance a budget, it goes into what's called a CR right now. I think we're about to go into CR. No, they signed it today, I believe. Is that when you're under a continuing resolution, then the agencies have to really hamper down and look at every single dollar spent at a microscopic level. So, for example, if I had a team that's based out of Billings and we had a loaded up coming into Glasgow, then I'd have to really look at it and make that judgment, make that call. No, we don't have the dollars in place. We're going to have to just skip it and let the bad guys win. So, working under being handcuffed to that dollar, it's hard to do. If they had a balanced budget, then we'd get the lump sum of money ahead of time, and we'd know, okay, this is what we have. This is what we have. No, it's coming down the pike, and we'll be able to do these operations. And so with that being said, everything that I have done in DEA has led me to this path right here. So I'm out there campaigning. I'm talking to people, but I'm also learning about the different issues that are out there. And I'm asking, why are these issues been out there for quite a number of time? I'm a fixer. I'm the type of, I want to fix. If I see something wrong, I want to fix it. That's just how I operate. And I'm seeing there's a lot of things out there here in the state of Montana that's not fixed. And I'm wondering, like, okay, why? Where are the monies? Why hasn't this been done? And I don't know why. I don't know why these things, lack of funding, lack of agreements with these local governments.
Give me an example. What's your biggest issue that you're looking at, like, attacking? What's the thing you're passionate about? You're like, I see it in front of me and we got to fix it now.
Well, I mean, for example, you have the rural areas that have water issues. You have the levee. FEMA has come in and said, you know what, we need higher levies, and therefore the local governments have to pay for it. Well, where are they going to get the money? They don't have the funding mechanisms. But and there's like a time frame that they have to get everything in place, or they have to reconstruct and they get everything properly up to standard. Well, then the Corps of Engineers are not working with them very well. So you start seeing this turmoil of different federal agencies fighting against each other on trying to achieve a certain goal that they changed up. And so you see that where the federal government is coming down and applying this pressure, where the local government's trying to, like, how do we do this? We don't have the funding. Something, stuff like that. You see things. I mean, let's go to the 30,000-foot level. Looking at our southwest border. Well, let's look at our northern border. Our northern border is wide open. I've been hollering at our representation since 2017 of, hey, guys, we need to fix our northern border. We've got Romanians coming down this area with Hispanics coming down this area. They're coming here illegally. We need to stopgap this. We also have a threat where the refugees are coming into Canada. If they can walk across the border, we can have another 9/11, and we found out it happened in our backyard. We need the assets up there. So I teamed up with the Border Patrol. We went down to Riverside, California, where we looked at all the structures and we've been able to see the footprint of the United States and how we're secured. When I was asking to reestablish or reposition assets to the northern border, they're like, Stacy, your Drug Enforcement Administration, stay in your lane. I'm like, yeah, but drugs can be coming down.
Yeah.
I need support.
We could block them from coming in.
Correct.
That'd be
And
nice.
so the attitude and what I heard was until something happens till we see a need to,
Right.
and I'm like, did we not learn something? Did we not learn anything after 9/11?
No.
Now we're back to reactive again instead of being proactive.
Yep.
So that right there, that's something that's right there in our face. We see it every day. We're seeing the illegals come up. We're seeing the human trafficking spike up. We're seeing sex trafficking jump up, and we're seeing the flow of drugs. Crime's gone up. That is something that needs to be fixed. It can be fixed, but it's not being fixed because of politics.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've seen that too. I call it, anticipatory leadership.
Right.
The best leaders anticipate problems that are going to happen, and they make sure they just never happen.
Mm-hmm.
I often say this a lot is like, one of the ways that you can never judge how successful a leader is that you're not going to know about a lot of the crises they prevented.
Point taken. Yeah.
They're just, if they're a really good leader, they're preventing crisis proactively. And so they're not happening.
Yes.
And you can sit there and say, well, nothing happens. We don't really know. Well, that might be a good sign that they're really well prepared.
If people thought that way.
Well, and I think people do. I mean, I know you do. I've had enough conversations with you to know that you do think that way.
Right.
You're not looking at like, well, how are we going to react to this situation?
Right.
There's plenty of things we can react to.
Oh, that is true.
There's plenty of things that are out of our control, but there are things that are in our control. We need to take them seriously.
Right.
And no, I agree with that. Whether you're into getting fit or staying fit or just having fun with the family, join the Peak Health and Wellness Center today. With 2 great locations in Great Falls, they're here to serve you. If you like weightlifting, functional fitness, or enjoy a wide selection of cardio equipment, the Peak has everything you need. They also offer classes for all ages and fitness levels. The Peak even has a daycare for those busy parents out there. Go check out the Peak today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, 1 cup and 1 bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and the choice for all your construction needs is Builders First Source. They even have an automated home builders solution for all of your construction needs. Go to 826 Northwest Bypass in Great Falls and check them out today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. You'll be floored. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems of Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems of Montana today. Everybody needs a good insurance plan. Whether it's for home or auto insurance, check out Heinbaugh Agency. Eric Heinbaugh is a local agent focused only on customer service, not sales. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. So what's your next pillar? What's the next thing that you really want to do?
Well, I want to get to this campaigning stuff. So
yeah,
if I was blessed to be elected, then and if Trump gets into the office, then game on. Is to turn this ship. We're not going to be able to turn it around. It's going to take quite a while to turn it around. But if we can just start putting it back on the right course, and I could be a part of that, then I'm happy. If I can fix those issues or help fix those issues in our rural areas in Montana, that's a feather in the hat. If I can get the people believing in us again, and when I mean us, just in America again, that's a feather in the hat. If we can get the next generation to start registering to vote and start getting them voting, that's an issue that I'm seeing out there also. That's a feather in the hat. My goal is right now is to be able to look myself in the mirror and actually say and say it truthfully that I did my best for our community, for the people, and people put trust back into us.
Absolutely. So you get elected day one. What are you gonna? I'm just curious. Like, if you're looking at the landscape of things and you get your priorities and you put together your team and you do the whole thing, like what issues do I see you standing before Congress and pushing like right away?
Immediately the border.
Okay. Top priority.
Border security is important because it has a domino effect.
Right.
Just like the things I had just labeled off. The second thing is going to be the national debt.
Yep.
That has to get taken care of. Otherwise, we're done.
How do we do that? How do we fix that?
You're going to have to start pulling monies back from everything. What does that mean? I mean, we have a lot of social programs that suck up money, and it's going to be painful. It will be painful. But you have a lot of monies going to these, let's say, NATO, UN,
Yeah.
WHO. We got to pull those monies back. I don't care what anyone says. We've been scammed. I mean, Trump did a great job of limiting the dollars that went to them when he was in office. Biden put them right back in their back pocket. But we're seeing monies go to the UN right now. UN gives the monies to the NGOs. NGOs give the monies to the illegals that are in Central and South America, and they're coming up.
Yeah.
It's that all the information whistleblowers are starting to talk about it. We got to streamline our bills. I mean, if monies have to go to, we need to stop sending so much foreign aid to all these different countries right now and take care of America. Now, people will squawk, oh, well, that's how you build relationships. No, that's how we support Pakistan. And
you don't build relationships by buying people. We have this conversation all the time in our organization, right? Because you've got leaders that, you got leaders that lead people and they do it by respect, and people respect them and want to follow them because they respect them. And then you've got leaders that buy people,
right?
And they give them incentives, they give them days off, they give them special treatment to get them to like them as a leader. Those leaders aren't respected.
Right. They're used.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing we are as a country.
Oh, yeah.
We should be leading by respect, not by buying power.
Correct.
And the money needs to be spent in this country.
Yes. Yes. If people knew how much money we throw at these countries.
Oh, yeah.
And basically we get the middle finger back half the time. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And we have to stop doing that.
Absolutely.
And we need to revamp our social programs. There's no way around it. And what's going to happen with the illegals coming in, and you see the freebie, you see the monies that are being given out to them, whether it be free health care in California,
the gift cards.
The gift cards.
They're finding them
all the stuff. And you start seeing that. It's like, okay, they're about to become on our welfare system. It's going to tank us.
Collapse us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know what scares me? I don't think this is a conspiracy theory by saying this. Some people might think this. What scares me, though, is that we've always tried to stop communism in this country. I mean, that's been the age-old thing since, after World War II, was we need to stop communism. And when you bring 7 million people of this poverty rate into our country that we can't take care of, but you force our social systems to do it, you've essentially created two classes overnight.
Oh, absolutely.
You make everybody in this country poor, except for your, global elites that go to Switzerland and done.
What a lot of people don't realize that these individuals are coming in, where they come in from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. They come from a socialist system. They expect the government to take care of them. That's what they're used to. That's what they were born into.
Right.
So when they come into our backyard, they expect the same thing. Their ideology has not changed.
Right.
They will expect that. They will demand it, and they will get it from the Democratic Party.
And do you think in a lot of ways too, it also creates a natural slave trade? I've often thought about this because I mean it's no secret, right? The argument for years is that Hispanics crossing the border come to the United States, their labor force, right? That was the argument during like the Bush years. Remember when he was loose on it a little bit?
Yes.
Because they provided a labor force. Like, who's going to do labor? Americans won't work this hard. Remember that whole thing?
Oh, yes.
And I look at all this now, and now you've got millions of illegals in our country, and they've got basically a slave trade. They've got, well, in exchange for staying here, you're going to do this work.
Yes. And you see it. You see it now.
Absolutely.
I'm seeing the slave trade in Mexican restaurants in Yellowstone County. I'm seeing that you go into a nail salon and you walk in and you look at how the cameras are positioned, and they're pointing inward at the different stations. That is slave trade, because they have individuals that are coming in, they've paid a fee, or they go work off their ability to be able to pay back their handler.
Their smuggler that got them into the country.
Correct.
Absolutely.
We're seeing that right now.
Yeah.
But, the slave trade, yes, you're going to have these individuals that are going to be put into these positions, but it's also opened up the door for the cartel members to come in, establish a cell or a location, and then they're going to slave trade these individuals that have come across the border, and they're going to have to work for these same groups that they're working in Mexico.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see in the next like 5 years, I can see our rates of sex slavery and work labor slavery going through the roof.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because they're here now.
Yes.
We don't even have to traffic them here for it.
Well, I mean, I worry about the kids that have come across the border.
Oh yeah.
That we've lost. We don't know how. We have no idea where they're at.
Oh, I've heard stories that they come in groups that are families, but most of the time at the border, it's mostly military age males. So in the meantime, they're selling off those women and children along the way.
Yes.
To get passage here.
Yes.
What happened to those poor people?
We don't know.
They probably are in sex slavery or murdered. It was terrible.
That's what I've been hearing.
And it's disgusting, and we are creating that problem.
Yes. The Biden administration can be labeled now as the largest human trafficking organization currently in the United States.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's absolutely terrible. And the whole, come here for a better life and all that stuff. And I think there's something to that, but there's a legal passageway to do it. And, and that legal passageway prevents a lot of those issues, prevents a lot of those sex trade, slave trade issues.
Oh, yes.
And, because you're a documented person now in the country. It's a lot harder to put a documented person in slavery.
We have laws on the books. We have a proper way of an individual coming in, getting their work visa or coming to visit, but there's proper steps. And the fact is that we're not upholding the laws of the land, and we're doing this for votes. We're doing this for maybe the slave trade. I mean, it's very dirty, and it's as bad as our departure from Afghanistan. This is one of the lowest moments in the U.S. history.
I was watching a podcast. I try to remember the guy's name. You've seen him before, I'm sure. He's a former Mexican police officer, and he goes on a lot of these podcasts. I saw him on Sean Ryan, and he talked about this. And this was 2 years ago, and he said in 5 years, the new generation cartel will be driving down American streets in armored vehicles. And he said this, and so that's 3 years from now. And he said, we won't do anything to stop it. And they will pull up to houses, and they will take our children, and they will drive them.
I hope he's wrong. But
think about it.
But you think about
they're already
they control
here.
California.
They're already here. All they have to do now is get the armored vehicle.
Right.
And then are we going to stand there while they're the cartel and they're stealing our children? Are we going to stand there and be like, get on the bullhorn and be like, stop, we can no longer, at this point, we can't ensure your safety. Yeah. We have a search warrant for that armored vehicle. We are, I've got 3 cops here with, Smith & Wesson revolvers, and
they're going to go pop, 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 pop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going beyond what, and I mean, you know me, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool constitutionalist.
Yes, you are.
I believe in it to the deepest bones of my body. And I understand that under the 14th Amendment, if you're in this country, you get the benefits of the United States Constitution. I get it. But this invasion has been created by our own government, which is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is like you said, we are now boiling in the water because we are complacent and stupid. And they are now in a full swing military operation against us.
Well, let me ask you this, because I worked in the gray, but you are the sheriff of this county.
Mm-hmm.
You're the top dog. How do you rectify that in your head?
I struggle. I do. You know, and here's the thing I struggle with. Trying to wrap your head around how you're going to deal with it. And I'll tell you what I learned that really rocked my OODA loop was when we learned that fentanyl was going for like a couple dollars down at the border
Mm-hmm.
and then would go up and up and up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was like a year ago, they were going for like $60 in Great Falls a pill
Mm-hmm.
and $100 on the reservation.
Yes.
And I started asking like, why? And then I realized that they were all hiding on the reservation. The cartel was.
Right.
And I remembered this. And I remembered this because I dealt with a lot of Native Americans when I was a city cop, on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd find out later that a lot of them were Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
And I never could tell the difference.
Right.
I could not. I mean, I tried. And they'd even wear tribal tattoos. They'd even claim tribes, all sorts of stuff. But they weren't even, you'd have them die and they do a DNA test on them and they'd come back as Hispanic.
Right.
And you're like, well, how is this? And those two cultures blend together
Yes.
really easily. So here's what we're up against. Let's take our community and let's just take Cascade County, for example. Well, or Billings. Billings would be another great example where you're from. Let's just take those two communities. What do they have a huge population of? Native Americans, right? Now you intermix the cartel in there.
Mm-hmm.
And you do a military operation and you don't give them their constitutional rights and you say, nope, you're a cartel member, you're going down. Good luck winning that.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, well, no, that's Johnny.
That's right.
He's a member of our tribe and this is in and all of a sudden you're like, because they going up to the reservation and they're building relationships.
Yes.
They're killing people like crazy. Don't get me wrong. But they also are terrorizing people. So they're either building relationships by fear or intimidation.
Yes.
Okay. Or they are sometimes smart enough to do good enough intel operations to build those relationships. So they would instantly get a population to turn on us.
Yes.
Break us down. And then we would lose confidence of the people. We're done. And we're probably going to prison.
Yes. But what do you do?
When is the turning point? When are we going to realize? And you dealt with this. And here's the thing. I know it can be done because you dealt with this in Afghanistan, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have different tribes of Afghani people.
Yes.
Right? They look the same. And some of them can converse in both tribal languages.
Pashto and Dari.
Yep. And they can do all that, right? But you work through intel, you knew who was who.
What? Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
Because we need to do that type of intel on them and know who's who. And we need to select the targets and we need to take them.
The problem is in a war zone, your rules of engagement change and you're able to do more.
Absolutely.
And we're able to do more in the foreign arena. Domestically is when we become handcuffed of how much we can extract from intel databases and stuff like that. You would have to have a strong leader in the office that would then you do his executive order, then we go into this creep because it can flip.
You bring up my next point. The expansion of the Patriot Act due to the invasion of these people.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying to me because I think the Patriot Act is totally terrifying.
Right.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. The fact that we can do surveillance on American citizens at will is horrifying to me. And now my fear is that it's going to get upticked even more out of this. Well, we have to identify who's here so we can remove them.
And that will be so when the Patriot Patriot Act was originally signed. We needed it. We needed it to be able to go against terrorists. But you always see one side that will say, no, you can't do this, and this is why. And then sure enough, who are the ones that are going to abuse it is normally those ones that cry out about it. Because they cry out about it, and then they flip it on its head. It's like, well, you know what? We're going to use that as a tool.
Yeah.
That is what happened during the Obama administration. We saw it flipped on its end, and it's like, holy smokes, this is horrible. But yet, law enforcement needs every tool in their toolbox to be able to utilize. I mean, especially in the state of Montana, when we have so many constraints working on the streets that we cannot protect our civilians like the state of Texas or Idaho or whatever. But then you go back to constitutional rights and the laws of the land. We're holding it and protecting the civilians this way, but we're losing the battle the other way.
Yeah.
With the FISA court, and how FBI abused that, it was horrendous. It was something as a tool that was needed, but then it got abused. And that's a problem. Man corrupts. Anything man touches, it seems like man corrupts.
And the problem is in law enforcement, once you abuse something, you're never getting that trust back.
No, you're not putting that genie back in the bottle.
I mean, it's like being Brady Giglioed as a cop. I mean, you're done. It's not, that trust is never coming back. You're never testifying in court again. And I've thought about all of this, like, how do you do that? And how do you deal with, I mean, because they are a terrorist organization operating in our country, killing our people. And the sad part is we're either going to have to be really, really smart and really patient. And that's going to come at a big cost of life. A lot of American citizens dying. I think right now, the best thing we can do is keep them from escalating.
Yeah, until, push back. Yeah.
Until you come up with a good plan. But the problem is, and I purposely stated everything I stated in this conversation to make the point that the only real way they purposely set up a way that the only way to really attack the cartels is to take away rights of the people, to diminish their rights.
Correct. But if you use the laws on the books, if we had the proper tools to go after certain activities, you have to have, this is where integrity and morals come back into play. You have individuals upholding the laws of the land, but doing it the right way, going after the specific targets that need to be jailed, let's say.
But Stacy, I'm going to argue with you real quick on that. How are you going to get informants to testify against the cartel? Because they are going to come after your family and cut their throats right in front of you and leave their heads and body parts on your doorstep. And you're not in our judicial system, you are not going to get people to testify against them. You will for a little while, but it'll go away, die down quickly.
It will. And that's when you have to have judges on your side of, you don't have to have a CS present in a court of law to testify in front of them. They would be protected. There's ways to do it, and electronic surveillance is awesome when it comes to that. But you have to have those right electronic tools in your toolbox to be able to utilize them. And we're lacking here. And that's where I get torn with the Patriot Act, because that gives us the tools necessary. Now, I can tell.
I'm totally playing devil's advocate with you, because I agree with you. But it's scary, because it's like,
once that genie's out, then it gets abused, and that's what we're seeing it firsthand. But I guarantee you, the cartels are using every tools in their toolbox.
Oh, absolutely.
To surveil us, to watch us, to understand what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And we're fighting this fight with one arm tied behind our back. And you can't expect us to be victorious if that's the situation. You saw that in Afghanistan, the rules of engagement started changing. And that was during the Bush era, is where, okay, now you can't shoot without permission. Well, now you can't shoot without permission with the higher ups saying yes. And it came very foolish very quickly. And that's how we lost Afghanistan again. We had won it up to 2006. ISAF took it over. Rules and engagement change. We lost Afghanistan because of that. That's what's happening here. within domestically. We can push the cartels back. We can fight them. We can also fight them on their soil. If we had a president who would declare that as a narco state, we can take care of business.
Why won't they declare that as a narco state?
Trade.
But what are we getting from them that we need so badly that we're willing to risk our entire country for?
Probably car parts and everything else, agriculture,
Right.
all that stuff.
So we just got to move our stuff back to the United States.
Oh, that would be, I mean, imagine that. Imagine that we did that. That would save us. I mean, we are self-sufficient. America is self-sufficient. We have everything across the board.
And we have like the wealthiest soil in the world.
Yes. But we handcuff our own. The government has a hidden agenda. And unfortunately, we are like sheep that follow along the line because we want to trust our government. We want to believe in our government. We want to believe that they're not going to sacrifice us. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. This conversation got dark. This conversation got real dark. No, it's so frustrating though, because like I believe so deeply in my oath. I am so dedicated to it. I would never want to do anything to violate it. But you deal with this problem, and it's a military problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I mean,
it is.
It really is. It's and I've always struggled with, when and we're a country too, that with the exception of like Pearl Harbor and 9/11, we've never been really struck on our own soil hard.
Knock on wood.
Right. But I mean, especially like with a conventional army invasion type of thing. And so this plan that they've come up with is so brilliant.
Oh yeah.
And they've truly already taken over our country in a lot of ways. And they're running the show, and we are lost as a country, and we're not running our own country anymore. And it's just so sad because it's like, really, we got taken over by a bunch of thugs, like
underneath our nose.
Right.
Yes.
And we did it out of this like good grace of humanity and, love and peace and all this stuff. And it's like, are you kidding me? And it's so aggravating. And
well, at Crime Stoppers, when I think the first one that you and I ever did, I remember talking about the cartels, and the cartels are here or they're coming or whatever. And I remember looking at the Facebook postings a couple months after the fact, and I just scrolled through and I started seeing postings of, I remember seeing a couple, and the person that had authored the message was laughing and saying, "We have been here. You just didn't know it." And I'm like, that's a true message.
Yeah.
And it kind of woke me up.
Yeah.
But we've been, if it's not in front of our face, we don't pay attention to it. If drugs are not there, if our kids are not doing drugs, the average Joe, if it's not right there happening in their backyard, then it's business as usual. You go to work, you raise your family, you don't pay attention to it. We've taken our eye off the ball, and that's what we got to get back to. We got to be, I hate to say this, but we have to be on surveillance. We have to, physically watching what is happening in our communities, in our schools, and we have to start being very active, and we haven't been active. Whereas the other side has been plotting and planning. The cartels have been plotting and planning, and we just been going bebopping in life and thinking, no, this is not happening in our community. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I think our affluence and how easy our life is here has also made us complacent. I mean,
I'm soft.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a child product of the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I remember, oh my gosh, you want to talk? I mean, I know that there was stuff going on. I'm not ignorant to that. But growing up in Montana during that time, it's like growing up in Disneyland.
Right.
You didn't deal with this stuff, or every once in a while something would pop off, but it was in a land far, far away.
Oh no, absolutely. And I started doing drug presentations. I started being very active on it probably about 2016, and started communicating to the communities of this is what's happening in your backyard. And people were floored. Even up to today, when I speak to the communities, they're like, well, we heard about fentanyl, but is it really here? Or we heard that's bad, but they don't know why it's bad.
Right.
And so when I start talking and they're like, what do we do? You see them getting fired up. I said, communicate. Start communicating with your loved ones. Start asking questions. Start getting it involved. If we didn't have the demand for all these drugs, we wouldn't have the need. They went. When I was in El Paso, when I worked down there, I had a source come in, a source of information, and that's when I was fired up, a naive agent, and throw everyone in jail and yada yada yada. And he would say, Stacy, he goes, you know what? We wouldn't be shipping our product to your country if there was no demand on it. Your people want it, so we were going to give them what they want. And I'm like, throw them in jail. But he was absolutely,
it's true.
absolutely correct.
No, it's totally true. No,
No, it's just, but I mean, circle back around, going back to the campaign, and the reason why I'm in it, instead of, going off in retirement, drinking lattes and eating my favorite chocolates, because I still had that fire in my belly. And if Trump gets back in, then it's going to be all hands on deck.
Right.
We need to clean house, gut a lot of these agencies, and it's balls to the wall. And you need to get people in there that have that mindset. And I figure that's what I can bring to the table.
Absolutely.
And I can't do it by myself. And we have to have a coalition of people that have that same mindset.
And what we're just talking about right now, and that's kind of why I went down the road of what ifs with you, is I think the viewer needs to see how complex this problem is, and how you, as a person who deeply believes in our Constitution, deeply believes in our country, and I like you. I can tell. I believe you when you say we can fight back the cartels. We can win this. And I wanted people to see that, because I've heard you say that before, and I've heard you talk about that before, and you give me a lot of faith in that. Because I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm an optimist. I am a total optimist. I believe we can do anything. I totally believe in it. But this problem has gotten so out of hand and so complex. And when you put our freedoms and our Constitution together with a military operation that's being run against us at the same time.
Yes.
And the two are syncing up, but we have a federal government that's in denial that that's what's happened. It is so challenging to bring it all together. And so it's going to take really good leadership to figure that out.
I have to disagree a little bit. I don't think our federal government's in denial. I think it's by design. And I think there's people inside our government, and if you want to call it the deep state or whatever, they are actively destroying us from the inside out. And they can do it because they're in power. And we have to get these people out of power.
Yeah.
With whatever it takes.
Absolutely. And what's sad about that is a lot of people, you can sit here and say, but it's both sides of the political aisle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's not, I mean, you and I are conservative. We could sit here and say, it's the Democrats. It's not. There's a lot of Republicans deep into this too. And
Absolutely.
then there's a lot of like apolitical people that are involved in this, that are just terrible. And they got to go.
It's the one worldview versus the America view.
Yeah.
And that's where it's coming to a head.
Yeah.
If we keep going the one world way, then America's no longer.
Then we'll be eating bugs.
Artificial.
Isn't that what they want us to do? Isn't that what all those globalists want? They want us eating bugs. You're not to eat beef or something like that.
That's true. They're growing. Yeah, they're growing the beef.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So let's talk X's and O's a little bit here. So, where are you going next? Like, do you got a plan on where you're headed next, and what areas you're concentrating on, so people who watch can know where to find you and all that good stuff?
Well, next week I will be back in Yellowstone County, going and walking and doing and just meeting the different businesses and going door to door and communicating with the public. It's not until next month I'm going to do a community event in Yellowstone County to discuss the drug problem, the crime, and the terrorist actions that taken place. I'm looking at setting up something up here in Cascade County. I don't have that arranged at this time, but I will be focusing on the next few Yellowstone County and Cascade County, because I haven't done my footwork here in this general area. So I will be floating between the two communities. because I've done a lot out in the rural areas because I wanted to get to know that area because that's where when we did our drug operations, normally we go in and get out very quickly. So I didn't know the community members as much. But that will probably be, I would say that's the Cascade counties in my next project.
Okay, great. Great. And how do people, like, they want to donate to you? They want to throw $100 bills at you. How do they do that?
They can go on my website, and we'll have to post that later on because I don't have it.
Okay. But if you Google Stacy Zinn, Zinn,
Yeah.
For Congress, it's going to come up,
Correct.
right?
And we're very active on Facebook. Stacy Zinn
yeah.
for Congress. I'm on Twitter. Yeah.
Are you,
And
are you on the gram? You on the Instagram?
I'm about to get
Instagram?
onto it.
You gotta get on Instagram.
Well, and this is what's been very hard for me because being in DEA had no social media.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so you kind of you operate in the dark and stuff like that. So it's like, what, I got to do this? What I got to no.
I did the same thing. So right before I ran for sheriff, I didn't have any social media. But the only thing that saved me is I was Internet Crimes Against Children. So I had all these undercover accounts.
See, yeah.
So I was operating undercover accounts all the time. So you learned like all the back end stuff of them too, because you had to do that. But yeah, so that only thing that saved me, because I totally know your pain. You're like, oh gosh, you got to start all this up.
Oh yes. And people kept saying, you got to change your photos and you got to do this. And I'm like, you got to wear this and you got to say that. I'm like, no, I'm just going to be me.
No, you're good. I've seen your photos. Your photos are great. I mean, they're very patriotic. A lot of them are throwbacks to your time in DEA. I can tell like one of your main ones, you're overseas, probably in Afghanistan on one of them. And it's important for people to know that you've been there and done those things. I think that's, I really believe those candidates are really coming to the top right now.
Right.
And so I think that's spot on.
Well, people, and some of the women goes, I got to change a photo. And I'm like, I don't have that many photos of me. I mean, I don't know what they think I've been doing, but I'm not that selfie. No, that's.
I actually had to go to, I had to hire a local company here to do headshots. Because I was like, what? So I remember someone told me like, you got to go get headshots. I go, don't shoot me in the head. What the heck are we talking about? I didn't know what it was. And then I had to go and like smile and pose. And he'd be like, lift your jaw.
Oh, talking about that, I have one that, it's a frontal shot. And everyone keeps saying, that's a mug shot. I'm like, no, no, you have to be, tilt to the side and wear a jacket. I'm like, that's a shot. I got lipstick on. It's a plus there.
What do you want me to do? Next one, I'll just hold a Glock like this and we'll call it good.
Yeah,
like,
that's right. Yeah.
Hold a Glock, do a Charlie's Angel pose, call it good. There you
don't
go.
even go there. I just hadn't been, Charlie's Angels in the hand.
There you go. The whole thing. Yeah, I know.
Yep.
I used to tease people on the range for that all the time. It was great. So, and then what's the maximum donation that people can donate? What's your like cutoff?
So individual can donate $3,300. A couple can be $6,600, and then that's in the primary, and then then it starts back at zero for the general.
Re-up. Yeah.
Re-up.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Yeah. And it's so hard to raise money in campaigns. It's so difficult, especially coming from a law enforcement background. Well, it's just tough.
Our problem was, or at least my problem, this is mine, when Congressman Rosendale wasn't jumping. Well, the Whisper campaign.
When he was back and forth.
Well, it's like the Whisper came, I'm going to run for Senate. But I felt, chain of command. He's the incumbent. He's in the seat. I felt very awkward of campaigning, much less asking for money, because I thought that was not right for the voter. The voter was confused. Is he going to jump? Am I going to take her for her word? It wasn't. So I didn't raise money. I fund everything on my own. Yes, have I gotten some dollars that people gave to me? Absolutely. But I wasn't actively seeking monies. Whereas you're not supposed to say competitors, the other candidates was raising money. And then I didn't know it. It's a scorecard. People are saying, oh, see, she or he's been able to raise this money.
Yeah.
Stacy has not.
Yeah.
But I was like, it's by design, but it doesn't look good out there. So that's, lessons learned.
Yeah.
But if I had to do it all over again, I still do it the same way because I didn't want to deceive, or I don't want to mislead the public.
A lot of people, like, especially in the big congressional races, I mean, they never close their fundraising. It's around the clock. Like they get elected and it just starts immediately, and it's just,
You know what? We have to change that. There,
I agree.
it's in because we've gotten to the point where it's, you got to hear 50 commercials,
Mhm.
but then people are not engaged. It's a catch-22.
I
The
agree.
community needs to be engaged. They need to know their elected officials. They need to know what's going on. On the flip side of the coin, we need to stop throwing so much money at these elections.
I agree. I think we need to way lower the amount an individual can donate. And I mean, I'm in the game, right? Just like you.
Mm-hmm.
I campaign, I have to do all that.
Mhm.
But I mean, we're up to, I mean, on a county race, it's $450 per individual now.
Mhm.
When I started, this is only 5 years ago, it was 180.
Oh, wow.
So it's inflated that much in that short a period of time. And I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong because I think we all know. I mean, you and I have both heard of the sleazy ways people get
Mhm.
money, you know,
Yep.
and it's just it's wrong. It is wrong. It should be a a max of $100 per person, and you just go out and hustle.
Yes.
And it is what it is.
Yes.
And everybody gets the same exposure. I also think they need to really do a better job of campaign finance oversight.
Yeah.
It needs to not just be complaint driven. They need to actually have people monitoring it and going, hey, this is wrong. This is, and you don't have to come down on people. Like I think of like gambling enforcement here
Mhm.
in the state of Montana. They're not a hammer. They go into businesses and establishments like, hey, that's an illegal gamble. You can't do shake a day or whatever it is,
Right.
and they just take care of it, and it's informal and they handle it. And they're like, well, we're going to expect you see to get on your form that you gave the people their money back.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
we're,
absolutely.
and we're good. I mean, it should be handled in a way that's respectful and decent. But we should do it in a way that the money, you're right, the money's out of control. I mean, some of these races, they're talking millions and millions of dollars to win races now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, geez, that that money doesn't just come from like hardworking individuals.
Nope.
It's coming from
Out of state and PACs.
other states, PACs, and illicit means.
Yes.
You know?
It's funny you say that because when I first was talking to my friends, so I'm looking at getting in, they're like, "You're not a millionaire."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah." And when did the middle class stop counting? And then I would hear, "Stacy, this is a $1.2 million race." I'm like, "What? Where?" Because I wasn't seeing it. And the media jumps you up of having to buy spaces and stuff like that. But I'm like, this shouldn't be a $1.2 million race. And when I heard of certain individuals getting in, oh, this jumped up to a $2 million race. I'm like, no, it shouldn't.
No, it should not be. And here's the other thing about it that's just crazy is like you go to buy billboards or ads and they upcharge you
Yes.
when you're in politics.
Oh, yes.
So if you owned, Heimba Insurance Agency, if that was your business, it's going to cost you like half of what it's going to cost you. But you're running for office, double it.
Yes.
So everybody's out to make a super fast buck.
Oh, absolutely.
Thing.
I learned that the hard way. I was like, just because I'm running a race, I've got to pay 25, 50% more. But it's the way it is.
And it's just, but we should not be selling our Constitution, and our political process. We shouldn't be selling it to the highest bidder. And it's starting to feel like that a little bit.
And that's where you're seeing the politicians change right there, because you're seeing more of the multimillionaires getting into power. And I'm sorry to say this, but at that level, they don't have our community's interest at heart. They are looking at the 30,000 feet level, and and that's where we're seeing the divide in both parties.
I won't say names, but I saw that happen with a particular politician, was really, really good on everything locally. And as time went on and they pull the numbers on of his evaluation, and as higher as evaluation went, the less he cared. And I saw that and I was just like, gosh, that's sad. It is. It's just, it's terrible. And, it's funny because I'm super, super lucky holding the office that I hold. I am so overly joyed and blessed to have it because it's still local. It's still small town. It's still an office that people deeply, deeply care about.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it. And I'm so lucky. And first of all, I'm super proud of you for doing what you're doing, but
Thank you.
I know what a leap that is. Like it's, oof,
Oh yeah, it
you
was.
know,
It was funny because people like, there was a lot of different reactions. One of them was like, when I said, "You're not a millionaire." The other one was, "You haven't done state politics. You haven't pushed that button red or green, and we don't know which way you're going to vote."
right.
And I hear that more so. I hear that very often. I'm like, I've ran DEA Montana. I have worked for this country close to 23 years. I've worked for the state for over 10 years. You just need to do some homework and you'll know what I've done.
They also need to understand when you've been on the tip of the spear of something in law enforcement, there are very, very few liberal minded people in law enforcement.
Hmm. You're absolutely correct.
It's like, what did they say? There's no atheist in a foxhole. It's
Yeah.
kind of the way it
Yeah.
is. I mean, I have friends that are liberal leaning that are in law enforcement, but they're liberal leaning. They're not, they'll
Yes.
never be obviously defund the police. They'll never go to the far. I mean, they won't even come close. I mean, they might have it's usually over like one issue,
Mhm.
right? And that they'll vote that way. And for a long time there was a time there with especially municipality cops,
Mhm.
it was unions.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
the
Yes.
union
Yes.
thing, right? But that's kind of gone away. That's not as powerful as it used to be. And now I'm seeing even police officers they're voting conservative. They're not voting
Yeah,
Democrat.
because I've seen what happens. What has happened when on defund the police and Antifa, BLM during that time frame, people started waking up and going, "Wow, when you don't have law enforcement present, when you see the weakening of law enforcement, this is what happens." And so you saw kind of a spin. I think that when people serve in the military or when they serve in the foreign arena, they serve in law enforcement, then they see the good and the bad and the evil. And then they start appreciating what they have. They start appreciating their country, their state, their community, their neighborhood. And when you walk through that, when you walk that walk, you're not going to go off in left field and vote
Yeah.
something off in left field.
Well, the Democrats actually used to be extremely good
Hmm.
about taking care of law enforcement. They
Hmm.
used to be awesome. Like if you go back to like Clinton era politics, I mean, he was master at taking care of law enforcement, understanding what law enforcement needed. And, I
Hmm.
mean, I think and a lot of it was good politics too,
True, true.
more cops on the street. But it, the party used to really believe in law and order.
Hmm.
I mean, New York City would have never got cleaned up. I mean, even though Rudy Giuliani's conservative, it would have never got cleaned up had the liberal politicians of New York not wanted it to.
Yes,
Because
yes.
they were outnumbered. There was no way it was going to happen. And you look at it and you're like, I don't know what happened, but we went to anarchy.
Hmm.
We went to this place and it's just frustrating. And I don't know. I'm really proud of you though. I think it's awesome to have a law enforcement leader running for Congress.
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. I feel like the voice of what we care about is heard because you're out there.
Right.
And so I'm super excited about your run and your race because I'm tired of law enforcement getting kicked in the rear end when, we're out there every day taking care of the community, fighting like crazy. And I want to see us get the tools we need. I absolutely don't want to see us get too big. I absolutely don't want to see us get too powerful.
Hmm.
I want to see the public remain in power and us be subservient to the public. But I want us to have the tools to protect the public properly.
And that's what you need. And right now, with the other side, when nefarious groups coming into the community, and when they have the more tools and they have more avenues, the justice system being weak, then they win, and it demoralizes law enforcement. It makes the community less safer.
Yeah.
So we have to embolden our local and our state, and even the federal agents that do grunt work or the drug actions and stuff like that. They need to be emboldened too. this state needs more resources. That's one thing I do is work behind the scenes and still talk to our legislators like, hey, we need A, B, and C, D. Please look into this. And I'm a strong, strong advocate for law enforcement. And I will always be, regardless of what happens, I will still be behind the scenes of trying to give our legislators guidance.
You know, one thing I would really like to see, though, I would like to see, because we talked about a bill that was possibly going to pass. It didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And you were very frustrated. We had a great conversation.
Yes.
But I would like to see a world where federal law enforcement comes into that community
Mm-hmm.
and they hopefully with your leadership, they will act like you do. They will come
Right.
in, they will meet with the local leaders, they will establish relationships,
Mm-hmm.
they will always advise them when they have things going on. They will say, we should all work together on these things
Mhm.
versus, no, we're just going to do whatever we want. And when the public gets mad, we're the federal government, so we don't make statements. So they'll assume it's you and good luck, goodbye.
Yeah.
Because that happens
Yeah.
all the time.
And I'm worried it's going back. It's sliding back.
And that is so aggravating.
Yeah.
I'm super lucky here. I've been very vocal about it, with the exception of probably only a handful of times. The local federal agents here very much are respectful of our local law enforcement. And then we've also had a couple of incidences,
Yes.
which has then made them pay more attention. So that's been nice. But I want a relationship with our federal government. I want to be able to work with them, but it's just, they gotta understand. And probably one of my biggest frustrations about the federal government, and when you get in Congress, see if you can change this. Why do they not have to talk to the press? I don't understand that. They're still accountable to the press. I mean, still accountable to the people, and the press is they should give a statement. They should say something. And I understand the indictment thing, right? I get it. I get that the federal government does grand juries, and grand juries are secret until that goes. But they'll come in with an armored vehicle and run over the front of the house and, monster truck the car in the driveway and go in with tactical teams. And it's like, no, I don't want to say a word.
Not saying a word. Don't say.
And it's like, today we executed a search warrant on a drug investigation. It's going to grand jury. We can't say anymore. Goodbye. Public would be fine, but they don't do that.
It depends on who the your U.S. attorney.
Yeah.
So and it also depends on the administration too. If DOJ clamps down, said you or no agencies will be given any statements until it's passed through the U.S. Attorney's office. That's where the U.S. Attorney's office they will err on the side of no, not cautious, of no before they do anything. And they'll pull out the little handbook and say, well, it's because of judicial rights and want to make sure we don't taint the courts, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I agree with you 110% that it can be, we approach this house, we did A, B, C, D. We will be able to give more information after a certain period of time, but this is a search warrant, arrest warrant, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that would appease people for right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the definition of bureaucracy.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Oh,
the
yes, it is.
definition of bureaucracy. And it's, and the frustration is us local law enforcement, officials, we get stuck holding the bag, and the public takes it out on us because they elected us. And we called and we try to get answers and we get told no. And it's dangerous and it's irresponsible. And I just wish that the federal DOJ would start looking at the citizens of our community as citizens and not look at them as subjects.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's my frustration. And I really, really would also love to see the federal government go to a model where they hire people who their goal is if you're going to put agents in Montana, hire Montanans. If you're going to put agents in, not saying that they don't need to TDY, not saying that they don't need to be on a tactical team and go get time in Afghanistan. I'm all for all that. I mean, good, that's great experience. But they ground their culture, their agents in culture that they're familiar with. Yeah. And ground that they understand.
DEA has flipped a lot on that. When I first got in back in 2001, there was a unwritten rule that if you came out of Montana, you're going somewhere else.
Yep.
Because they didn't want that officer coming back. Is he, friends, undercover work, yada, yada. Then they flip-flop where they started hiring out of that Montana, and then they can put them back in Montana, and they did it to save money.
Oh.
It was a money thing.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense, though.
Correct. And so you see it go back and forth.
So, like, here's a simple example, though. You're going to move into leadership. So you're going to do what you did, and you're going to become a resident agent in charge.
Mhm.
They should promote you and move you.
Right.
They should take you away from your peers for a while. Make you go learn how to be a leader in a
Sure. Yeah.
situation where you're not leading your peers who yesterday you were griping
Yeah.
with, right? But then after a couple years, you go back.
Be able to go back, yes.
And you go back to where it is. I mean, little moves like the military does similar things like that.
Mhm.
Those moves are smart.
Right.
Those moves are spot on. But I think that's another way, I mean, not to go too extreme, because this is an example. But I mean, if you look at like Hitler and the Nazis, he brought in police from not those communities. That was the first thing he did.
No emotional attachment.
Because they don't have an emotional attachment to those communities. And then when he started making them do things that were terrible, it was easier for them to do.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying the federal government does that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's something I think about all the time. Like, if we hire someone from out of state for our organization,
Mhm.
one of the first things I preach to my leaders is like help them understand our culture.
Right.
And a lot of times the great thing about Montana is most people see what's here and they understand the culture and they're like, I want to go be there. So they assimilate quickly because they're fleeing California or something like that. And they're just like, they're like, I want to be here. I'll assimilate, but it's just one of those things I think we sometimes forget about, is that it's a lot different when you live, breathe, grown up, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts and uncles, they live in that community.
Mhm.
You start to care about that community in a totally different mindset than you do if it's just, this is my duty station.
That is true. And the problem with feds also, we moved around. We move around so much. And so you'll see, I put myself in your shoes where you see a rack come in and you're like, okay, I got to break in another rack. Let me see what this person like. You watch them for a little bit and then determine friend or foe. And then once you start developing that relationship, friend or foe, then all of a sudden they're gone 3 years later.
Yeah.
And it's rotating. Or they're coming here because maybe this is a hard place to fill. So they're coming in and they don't really care for it. Then you still have to deal with that type of personality.
Yeah.
And trying to build bridges and so that trust factor comes into play.
Absolutely. Well, Stacy, this was a great interview. I really appreciate you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
good luck. I know you're going to do well.
Thank you.
Yeah. God bless you.
God bless you.
Yeah. Take care.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Jesse Slaughter with the Pursuit Podcast. And we really appreciate the amazing support already that this channel has received. Our social media is blowing up. Everywhere we look, people are liking and clicking and commenting. But what we really need you to do is subscribe to our Facebook page and follow us on Spotify. That's what drives this channel. That's what's going to keep this channel going forever. Tim and Ben are behind the scenes doing tireless editing, working on this to make this come out the way it does, this high quality product that it is. So please go in there, click subscribe, click follow, and make sure that this channel sticks around for a long time, because we truly believe it's doing a lot of great things for our community. But there's many, many other people out there who we need to support. So follow and subscribe today. Thank you.